What is going on, everybody? This is episode 379 of Pop Culture Crisis. My name is Brett. I once again have two fantastic guest hosts with me today. To my left, would you introduce yourself, please?
Is that me?
That's you.
Hi, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for timcast.com. I'm back, people.
My left, your,
I don't know what direction.
That happens to me all the time. And to my right.
What's up, everybody? Ian Crossland coming at ya.
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man.
Good.
Thanks for the
It's funny because I was telling, whenever Phil was on last, I was telling him I was in your chair on IRL last time, and I never get it right whenever they go around the room to do the introductions. I always screw it up. They're like,
it's always clockwise.
Yeah, nobody points to me.
One time Alad was on and he was sitting in the extra chair and he like pointed to me when it was like his turn. I was like, no, you do it. You're going to mess us all up if you bounce it around. But I think he was trying to be polite, but it's still like, no, you have to respect our order. I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, I go clockwise.
Yeah.
I like to pick it up off of the guy in front of me, whoever that is.
Yeah.
They toss it
You
at me.
can't just toss this introduction thing around the table. It's confusing.
It is.
That's why, like, right now I was expecting you to go to Ian because that's the way we normally
We should
go.
all talk at the same time.
Since implementing like this seating arrangement here, not using that one, I've gone this way around.
It's chaos.
So,
This
yeah.
place is chaos now.
And Mary's on vacation?
Yes, she is. Also,
What's up, Mary?
do you have the Google Doc pulled
Yep,
up? There?
I have
Okay,
it.
perfect. Speaking of Google Docs, guys, before we get started, would you like this video and subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already? And like Ian said, you know, happy vacation, Mary.
Happy Easter.
And if you guys have any super chats, $20 and over that you want us to read right then and there, we will interrupt the discussion. We will read them. We will answer your questions or your queries, and then we will get right back to the discussion. So if you guys are ready, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about Jamie Foxx, and we're going to be very careful with this one. We're going to talk about this interview that was given where somebody claims to have inside knowledge about what happened to him and how it was a mandate from a studio that he was working for. And I want to talk about that because the COVID mandates actually just ended for Hollywood at the end of May. So we literally got through that. It's like living through a fever dream. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about Disney. We're going to talk about the fact that MSNBC wants you, the comedians of the world, to censor yourself because they said so. It's for the vague cause of the greater good or something or other. Sarah Silverman is their example. I don't know if Sarah Silverman is really a fantastic example of like comedy, but you know, it is what it is. We'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about Jenna Ortega, where this video came out where Jenna Ortega was caught smoking because she's like 20 years old. And I want to talk a little bit about fan worship and how much people seem to identify with celebrities these days, what you're kind of entitled to as the fan of some big celebrity, what you should expect from them and what you shouldn't expect, because I think there's a lot of discussions happening there that I find very, very interesting. So if you guys are ready, we will get right into it. Hannah Claire, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready for sure.
And you don't have to worry about that one. Just
I'm
that
overwhelmed by the money guns. I'm out of practice here.
Just that one. I'll take care of this one over here. No worries about that. Ian, are you ready?
I am.
All right, let's get started. So, start of the show. First things first. This is kind of serious, but I do want to talk about it. If you did see this thing about Bam Margera, who has been having kind of a bit of a breakdown due to the fact that he's
for the past couple of decades, right?
Yeah, well,
it's been on sort of an on and off breakdown
it is,
for
but
a while.
He gave this. He put out this video that I found to be a little bit concerning. So I want to play this for everybody here. What it is he's not just going through issues with drugs. He's clearly going through issues with his ex-wife and his child, and it's really, really harming his mental health. And I think that he has to. There's some accountability issues here that I noticed right away, given my own past and my own history. So I'm gonna play that video for you right here. Oh, here it is.
This is an official message to anybody that cares about me whatsoever. I haven't seen Phoenix in 2 fucking months, and I'm so fucking fed up. I cry every day. I miss him so much, and I know that I have to wake up every day knowing that I probably won't get to talk to him or see him. So yes, Nikki drives me to fucking drink. So does my fucking mom. And so does my fucking pep talking dad who tells me nothing but I'm a fat fucking loser, piece of shit, drug addict fucking loser. So, and my mom is a brain fucking manipulator, and my brother stole Castle Bam, and he thinks it's called Castle Jess, and then I have to listen to my mom say, Bam, you do have a house. Really, Abe? Where? Well, it's Castle Bam. Well, if I go there, then the police will come. And Naveed the shaman, my best friend, came in from fucking Persia, and I can't even go show him my own property. I gotta stand behind the gate. So, yeah, April, I don't have a fucking house. So I'm gonna smoke crack with the bums down at the boardwalk until I'm dead unless you deliver me fucking Phoenix. Get to work, Nikki, or anybody that wants to help.
That is unfortunately a sign of, look, custody battles, as we know, are historically very, very bad for a lot of people in relationships. If one gets full custody and somebody that really, really wants to be part of that child's life isn't given permission to do so. But he's clearly in no position to be around a child right now. That seems very, very obvious to me. And the first thing that hit me was that he's blaming everything on other people, right? Like, he's not taking responsibility for his own actions. Even just the idea that not understanding that making this video is harming your ability to see your own child is a sign that you're not able to get through it yet. And it just makes me wonder how much, for an industry like Hollywood, like how far do you have to fall in the public eye before you can actually go and get help? Because everyone has tried to help him. All his friends have tried to help him. And it makes me sad. Like, to see something like that with somebody who has kids, who has children, where that's part of the issue, right? Like, you have to worry about how your children will be affected with your behavior.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the conversations you have to have, talk about someone's maturity. I mean, he is blaming a lot of stuff on his family members. I understand that your family circumstances do influence how you perceive the world, but obviously you're ultimately responsible for your decisions. What bothers me the most is that he's like leveraging his child to, like, as an excuse, like, either you let me see this kid or I will continue to abuse drugs. And, like,
not understanding that his behavior, him harming himself, hurts other people.
Why would anyone be like, well, you make a good point. We'll bring you a small, this child looks, from the photos, looks very, very young.
Yeah.
If your excuse to abuse drugs is like, well, I'm not going to see my kid, like, how do we know you're like a safe and stable person to be around this child in the first place? Like, hopefully you'd want to be sober because you want to put your best foot forward for your child. You wouldn't have to be like, well, you bring him to me right now, or I'm going to, it's all of y'all's fault that I'm, abusing substances.
That's that weird phenomenon where someone isn't getting what they want, so they start acting out and being more of a bad person. Like, they're not getting what they want because they're kind of an asshole, so they get angry and they become more of an asshole. And that's like, well, that's defeating the purpose. The reason you didn't get what you want in the first place is because you're an asshole. So, like, the kid, they're not giving the kid to him because he's a crackhead or whatever. And now he's saying, I'm going to be more of a crackhead if you don't give me my kid.
Right.
It's like, dude, what this is for your therapist, Bam. This is not for TV.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like that's the whole point of the therapist, right? It's like putting this out in the world. Like, that's in a safe place. You could kind of vocalize that type of frustration, but not in public and expect it to not come back on you.
I'm sure his ex-wife has now downloaded this video, submitted it to her lawyer in case in the future they want to renegotiate custody. And she's like, look, this guy is threatening to do drugs and harm himself, basically, because he's saying, you'll find me by wherever, unless I produce my child to him. Like, that's not a stable or safe environment for the kid, and that's ultimately what everyone in this scenario should put first. Unfortunately, I just don't think Bam has the maturity to do that. Like, I know addiction is a very complicated thing, but on top of that, this person is immature. They can't see that they have brought a child into the world, and at a certain point, your needs have to come secondary to your child's needs, especially when it comes to their safety.
Well, even in this case, it's not even about the child's needs becoming second. He needs to put himself first and take care of himself before he can even think about being part of what the child needs.
But that's like the same edge of a second edge of the same sword, right? Like, if he put himself first by getting sober so that he could be with his kids, he's also putting his kids' needs first. Like, saying, I am going to abuse drugs unless you give me what I want, to your point, is this like very strange paradox of thinking that you deserve something or that someone owes it to you for you to get your life in order. And in this case, like, you actually owe it to your kid.
Yeah. I mean, his kid and himself. Like, does he want to have a fulfilled life where he gets to be part of his child's
I just don't think
up?
he wants to give up the lifestyle he has right now, is what it sounds like.
And it's hard for people in that position, especially when you haven't kind of humbled yourself to the point where you know you need to do something about it and take care of yourself. Like, it's very hard to find yourself in that position without something bad happening in a lot of respects. Did you see that Robert De Niro and Al Pacino are both having kids?
No, right now they are.
In 79 and 82. And
one of them, Al Pacino, asked for a paternity test because he was like, I don't think I can father kids. You got to prove it to me that this is in fact my child.
Apparently it's true because they're still together.
And that girl was Mick Jagger's ex-girlfriend.
She's 20. She's 29.
Holy
and she
God.
was Mick Jagger's girlfriend before them. But what's funny about that is, like, somebody's like, because I saw some posts on Twitter where people are saying, like, they called her a 29-year-old teenager. like what he's abusing her. I was like, it's actually more plausible that she's abusing him with dementia than it is that he's abusing a fully functioning 29-year-old woman.
Yeah, I think it was maybe Liz Wheeler on Twitter who was like, no, she has like, either she has a very specific type, extremely older men, or she is specifically looking for like late age older men to potentially father children with.
And Nicole Smith all over again, except for just not just waiting him to die, but trapping him in there. But my point was, I was like, he's having kids. That Al Pacino's going to be 100 when before that kid's 20.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, is that there's some moral or ethical discussions to be had there about whether it's the right thing to do to raise your, to father a child when you're not even going to be able to around for less. You'll be around for less than a quarter of their life.
And if I remember the story correctly, and Al Pacino asked for a paternity test, he did not think he was going to father a child.
Yeah.
So it's not like this was a consensual, hey, I love you so much, let's bring a child into this world. This is like some sort of weird surprise situation, which I think is also complicated to bring children into.
Do you think for Bam Margera's situation, this is the type of thing that he can come to a realization on his own, or is he going to need help to do so?
He can, but I mean, alone on his own is kind of
not without help. But I'm saying, will he come to the realization, like for a lot of people, you need to have something so bad happen to you that it wakes you up to what's going on. But the stuff that he's going through, like he's had multiple, like he got in a fight with his brother, he was on the run from the cops. Like he's getting to the point now where outside of maybe like a near-death experience, which he might have had and just might not have been reported, outside of something like that, which is one of those ones that tends to sober people up to what needs to be done quicker. But for a lot of them, like just having the child, it shows the depths of the problems of drugs when that's like when something is so blatantly needing your help, like a child.
Well, how much did you guys follow Bam in like his show?
Never.
I saw 1 or 2 episodes of the show that he had. He was really popular with some of like the skater kids that I knew growing up. And I had a hard time with the show because basically they're like, they're basically being immature, like they're pranking each other. They would like do something to his dad, who was like this overweight guy, like all the time. Like they'd run into the dad's room in the middle of the night, like screaming to like wake him up, or they would like, kind of do these like very physically dangerous, what's that show? Jackass style. Yeah.
Yep.
And to me, part of that was training Bam that like being immature and destructive was good. It earns you money. You get attention for it. And that translated from being probably a small child to being an adult. Like that was his career. And so I think when you have that ingrained in you, the idea that like you being destructive and you not taking responsibility and you potentially harming other people is ultimately something you are supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Especially because he profited off it. It's very hard to unlearn that. And I think unfortunately that's one of the challenges of where we are now. Like
that's
having
scary.
a child isn't enough for him because success and happiness are linked to being irresponsible and immature.
Yeah, big problem a lot of people face is the thing you did to get famous is not necessarily the thing you need to continue to do after you become famous. So like, for whatever reason, he got famous for being an idiot. And now it's time to stop being an idiot and start being a virtuous dude. There's this like glorification of hitting rock bottom that's very dangerous because a lot of people hit rock bottom and kill themselves or die from alcoholism. They drink themselves. A lot of people, and you don't hear those stories.
Themselves emotional scars they can never recover from.
Yeah. So I don't think that him falling apart is necessarily the best path forward. But I mean, looking at that guy, I don't know anything. I want to like him because people talk highly of him around here. Like they have a reverence for him because he was a skater.
He was like a big deal back in the day, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But like everything I hear about him is he's self-destructive. Even the Jackass guys don't want to be around him.
Well,
apparently
like
his ex-wife doesn't want to be around him.
Steve-O took him on tour with him, just basically saying like he's like trying to get him back on track. Like, dude, people want you to make it. Like nobody's here's rooting for your downfall. So like, but when you're lashing out at your friends and you're not accepting help from them,
and you're like 38 and blaming your family for your alcoholism. What the?
That's crazy.
That's insanity.
That's the first thing you have to dispel.
But I also think it's not like I think addiction is part of this, but I do think, and I have stressed this like enough, that it's maturity, right? Like he is not holding himself accountable, not just because of addiction, but because of his personality. So like if he never had a problem with addiction, his personality would still make it difficult for him to take responsibility for things. I mean, that's just my impression from having never met him in real life.
Yep.
How old? Oh, he's 40, 43.
Yep. All right. In some worse news, did you see that Alec Baldwin said that the Rust producers settled with the family of Helena Hutchins on the
They settled. They
Yeah.
had an initial settlement like last year.
Yeah,
Was
but-
it disclosed how much?
No disclosure. It says Russ settlement approved in wrongful death lawsuit against Alec
Yeah.
Baldwin. No amount was listed, but I'm sure it was a
But
hefty
her
sum.
and her husband is now an executive producer on
the
Rust.
film.
So,
And they're
but
making a
that-
documentary
But they
about
made
it.
that announcement over a year ago. So between the two parties, they had already settled it, and it was just waiting to get approved by court, I think.
Yep, it just came through. So that's. I'm sure it was a very large sum of money. That is for sure. Also, guys, Egypt is demanding $2 billion in compensation from Netflix for making Black Cleopatra.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm picturing so it says an Egyptian team consisting of several jurists and archaeologists demanded financial compensation worth $2 billion from Netflix for distorting the image of Queen Cleopatra and ancient Egyptian civilization. I'm picturing like an old like infomercial. It says like, if you or any of your friends had a race swapped version of a Netflix movie,
Yeah.
you may be entitled to compensation. Like that's literally the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this. But they're basically saying that you're doing like irreparable damage to like
You're deleting
the
out
legacy.
people. Yeah.
It's erasure, as they love that word, erasure. So they're saying they want $2 billion
Do you think
for
that's
it.
uncalled for, or what do you think?
I don't know how do you prosecute something like or how do you adjudicate something like that?
I think part of it is proving that Netflix didn't honor their culture. I mean, it's all one of these like intangible things that we now have to settle in court.
Well, how do you how is what is the crime in not honoring someone's culture? Like, what is the actual?
Well, also like can
it should be,
was
but
it?
it's not.
They swapped one of the British monarchs
Yeah.
with an African American woman, and like theoretically, should England then sue for that? Are you allowed to sue if you're a white dominant country? I don't know. I think part of it is good for them, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like if you feel like Cleopatra is a huge part of your history, and some American-based company just decided to alter it dramatically for their own gain to seem cooler, seem more diverse.
Think about like America does Hamilton. Like we do Hamilton here.
Yeah, but Hamilton is like, I don't want to say a parody, but it's like a creative reinterpretation. But it doesn't change the facts, right? It
And
gives
this
you
is a
timeline.
documentary, not a
Right,
parody.
like
Yeah.
if it's a documentary and I was like, hey, I want to learn about Egypt, and you put this on and I was being presented as facts, like, and it's actually false, I feel like Egypt as a country, as a nation, as a people, like have the right to be like, hey, company that is profiting off this, you should at least portray us accurately, right?
Did they say? I didn't see the documentary. Did they say that this is what she looked like? This is an accurate representation.
Basically, the lady they talked to a bunch of experts, and I kid you not, there's a line in the documentary where a lady's her evidence is like, my grandma once told me, I don't care what anybody tells you, Queen Cleopatra was black.
And that's their justification.
And that's their justification for it. Obviously, she was Greek Macedonian. It's really funny watching stuff like this happen because it's such a uniquely American issue right now to be that overly concerned with race. It feels like it's a very American issue. Like I go through a lot of when I'm reading things either in articles or comment sections where it's people from other countries who look at the way we're behaving with each other here in regards to the discussion of race, not just in Hollywood, but in general. And they're always like, we don't get your obsession, your country's obsession with this issue.
Well, we have like an oversimplified obsession where like Egypt's in Africa, so therefore has to be black. And like you've obviously never met anyone from Africa. It's hugely diverse, just like a lot of other countries. You know, being like boiling it down to everyone has to have the exact same skin tone is actually like very close-minded and bigoted.
You could fit like 5 United States inside of Africa.
Is that
huge?
Yeah. Well, and I think of like Tunisia, which is at the top, very different body type, skin colors than people who are from Nigeria. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I think it's very close-minded of Netflix to come in and say like, actually, Egypt, we know better than you. Yeah.
But additionally, modern Egyptians today are not the same culture as Cleopatra's Egyptians 2,000 years or how long ago? 2,000 years ago? Yep. Different culture. Maybe it's the same country name, but it's a different culture. They did different things. They ate different foods. They spoke different languages. I think they spoke different languages. I don't think they still speak.
I mean, it's evolved from
Could be
this
wrong.
core
Yeah,
culture.
yeah.
It has obviously taken on different traits.
I'm not the same culture of George Washington. We have different cultures now. This modern America is a different culture than 1776 America.
It is rooted in some of the same places. Like the evolution stemmed from the place it was before.
I would even say George Washington's culture is more like England's culture of that time than it is like America's culture of today.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I don't think these guys have a
But
ground to
American
stand on.
culture is
They don't get to claim Cleopatra just because they live in Egypt. It was 2,000 years
Really?
ago. Yeah.
I feel like it's totally fine. It's their history, right?
Yeah. It's
No, I don't think
I don't
history
think
belongs to
Netflix
anyone.
gets to say we know better than you, people who are actually from this country.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's what they're saying necessarily.
That
I didn't
kind
see
of
the
is,
movie.
though. They're saying we're making a documentary about Egypt, and we believe this is the way Egypt looked, and their historic figures acted and sounded and looked like. Like
You would
that
have to-
seems a little arrogant on the part of an American country. Like, did they consult anyone in Egypt? I hope they talked to people actually of Egyptian descent. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't trust Netflix, I guess.
But this would open the door to sue Ancient Aliens, shows like that, for
Yeah.
saying we think that this was the ancient. You don't have proof that was out of a story.
Yeah, I don't know how you-
defies my.
See, I think it's more like suing, like Ancient Aliens is, in some ways, hypothetical. And maybe you should actually, as I'm saying this, maybe you should be able to sue Ancient Aliens, right?
Leave
Like,
Ancient
maybe-
Aliens alone.
Maybe you should have to prove your claims. Maybe your claims should be on solid evidence. Like, I know you talk about like opening the code a lot. Like, shouldn't we be able to say like Ancient Aliens, where are your source documents? Post them in a blog for me to review later.
I guess it depends. If like you can make a fantasy movie about anything you want and cast anybody you want as any character, and that's your creative right.
And it's fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're presenting something as fact, like a documentary, that feels very different. And I don't technically know how Ancient Aliens classifies itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, do they classify themselves as truth, or is it somebody saying, "Hey, this is my interpretation"?
Yeah, I don't know.
of the world. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes. It also could just be the type of thing because they're also like Egypt. In response, has decided that they're going to make their own documentary to put out.
That's the way to go.
Like that would be the way to go.
But
I
they
guess.
don't have the same international power that
Exactly.
Netflix does.
They
So
would have
you're
to
gonna
sell
get
it to Hulu
the
or something.
authentically Egyptian documentary versus the Netflix version, and Netflix is going to be like, cool, we will not buy yours, and also we're one of the largest streaming platforms in the world.
Or even funnier, they do buy it, and then they make money on both
I would
ends.
love it if they just put them side by side and say, you decide.
It's just its own category, and then they have like a 2 for showing where you can watch them back to back. They're like, "Who's right? You tell us."
Netflix is like, great, more binge watching.
Exactly.
A culture we have created.
More money for them. All right, guys. Also, Tom Cruise is not very happy right now because apparently Oppenheimer is going to be stealing up a lot of the IMAX screens for the film Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer is going to be taking a lot of the IMAX screens that were originally set for Mission Impossible 7 Dead Reckoning, which you might have been on the show where they showed like the stunt that he did where he rides a motorcycle off the side of a mountain and then uses a parachute. Like, he did all this work. It took like a year to do the stunt, and now it's not even going to be in IMAX theaters for more than a week. Like, that's got to annoy him a little bit. But then Oppenheimer is a very big deal, and Christopher Nolan is a very big
Yeah.
deal, so he gets more.
I have
leeway.
more sympathy for the original movie as opposed to the 7th sequel.
3 hours long though.
I
3
don't know,
hours.
team.
But,
I'm sorry, the 7th rendition of your movie isn't going to be an IMAX for more than a week.
I'm going to argue with you on
Maybe
this
it's
one,
time
but
to let it go.
But I made the same argument the other day. I'm like, oh my gosh, Oppenheimer's 3 hours long, and then I'm like, well, maybe a movie about the creation of the atomic bomb is one of the ones that warrants the 3 hour runtime, if anything, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like if you were making a movie about not making an atomic bomb, but like about atomic bombs and their various productions, you would need more time to try and be accurate in your representation. Because if you cut too many corners there, it's gonna start to seem like pseudoscience.
Yep. Well, he has he hired nuclear physicists, and they basically recreate everything but the nuclear element in the explosion in the same place. I think they went to the same. It was New Mexico, right? Like, I think they ended up filming in the same location in New Mexico or something like that. So it's crazy. Also, did you guys? I don't know if this would ever have gotten brought up on IRL. Have you seen any of the story about the TikTok menace dude who just keeps going into people's houses?
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys talked about Mizzy, his name was. Well, he finally got arrested like a week ago. And then after he got out, because they basically gave him like a probation for a period of time, he then like walked into the main compartment of a train and basically took over a train. Well, he has issued an apology because the Tate brothers are going to lead him down a good path. That's right. It's going to take Andrew Tate to save the day and bring this kid back to the light. It says, I'm not kidding you. TikTok prankster was arrested and charged several times.
TikTok criminal.
He's a criminal. Like that's a big issue right now, right? It's like you can just go up and do anything. Like
TikTok
when Decoy Voice was here,
user who tried to make B&E cool.
yeah, he would just break into people's houses, and then like that guy's got his kids there, and he's obviously worried and like, what the hell is this random person going into my house for? He threatened to like off a lady.
He's just a fun prankster.
Yeah,
don't talk too hard on this guy who broke into other people's houses.
This is what he said. He goes, I know I ain't the best with my words, but I just have to try and understand and listen to what I have to say. I made a very dumb, stupid mistake. A house is supposed to be a safe space where you know you can relax without being in any sort of distress. And me walking into that house was a problem. He says. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but he released a long thread basically apologizing for his behavior. So I guess that's Andrew Tate 1 and the rest of the world 0. Took Andrew Tate to be able to turn this kid around. Did you see his BBC interview?
Yeah, I just watched that today.
It's crazy, huh?
Yeah, I had it on in the background. I listened to it.
He goes back and forth with this lady from the BBC, and it's very combative, the whole thing.
Yeah, it was just like she would say that he said certain things. He'd say, no, I didn't say that. Yeah. And this was like, what is the point? Like, I don't know who's being honest here. And he would also, every time it would get sensitive, he'd be like, I can't talk about it because it's an ongoing investigation. Yeah. You know that. And then she'd push him on it, and he'd be like, I can't talk about that. Yeah. And then it just ended really poorly.
The other thing that's interesting is he makes a distinction in here where he says that Mizzy is not me. Mizzy is a character. And then he mentions that that's not his real name. He's got his name is different, and he points out that Mizzy is different from who he is in real life. But it's social media, which is supposed to be an extension of you, and it kind of points out that we're in a weird kind of hyper reality now.
Maybe you want to think that, but like if he wanted to be not him, Mizzy, he would have made a show where he did that with actors. He actually went into the people's houses. That was him. I don't care what he calls himself. That's what he did.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have social media personas, and some people's are more authentically tied to themselves than others. Like there are a lot of people who go into vlogging or do whatever who are authentic but also hype up certain parts of their personality more. Being able to say like, oh, it's a character and that's who broke into people's houses, like that's just you trying to pretend like you are not responsible for the decisions, right? Like
yes, that would be called psychosis or some sort of
or
psychosis.
Just not being mature enough to accept responsibility, right? Like even if you are pretending you're a character, you're still responsible for that character because you are actually not a different person.
It's actually the same approach that they used to take in pro wrestling, where they'd say like the best pro wrestling characters are just an extension of who you are, but like dialed up to like 11, like to like 200%. So it's like you take who you are authentically and you just kind of add a bunch to it and make it over the top, and that's the best kind of character because it helps. The authenticity shines through when you don't have to act as much. Yeah. I don't know if him breaking into houses is what I would consider authentically acting.
Because if The Rock broke into people's houses and was like, can you smell it? And they're like, get out of here. He'd be like, no, Dwayne, you broke into somebody's house. I don't care if you were in character
You have
or
to
not.
arrest The Rock. If you can catch him, that would be great for you. But I think there are people who do the opposite, which is like, they're more introverted. And so to create a character, on YouTube or whatever, that is someone else. But they don't then later say like, so I can do whatever I want if I'm this other person, right? Like, I don't think creating a character is necessarily bad. It's the fact that you can't just blame someone else. Like, we can't just say like, oh, but The Rock broke into the house, and it'd be like, oh, well, guess there's nothing we can do about that.
Darn, I didn't know
he was in character when he committed the crime. So
you can only serve him a warrant when he's in character.
Anytime he's Dwayne Johnson, you're like, oh, too bad.
Suddenly The Rock retires very suddenly.
You're out of luck. You're out of luck, guys. All right. I want to talk a little bit about Disney because you guys on IRL have discussed quite a bit lately about boycotts and everything going on with Target and with all this stuff. Disney is a good example of where I think it's a slower decline, but we're finally starting to see some of the repercussions of Disney's behavior right now. It says Disney completed a nearly 7,000 person layoff ahead of Memorial Day. And that is crazy to me. So it's 3.2% of the workforce is now gone, all because they're making movies that nobody wants to go and see.
Did it say what departments or across?
Yeah. So it says the 7,000 layoffs, which represent 3.2% of Disney's total headcount of 22,000 jobs worldwide, are part of Disney's efforts to achieve $5.5 billion in cost savings. So this is all from the entertainment divisions. So like right right now, when you really think about it, like you guys have talked a lot about I've been kind of like iffy on the boy. Like I get very exhausted talking about the boycotts and everything that everybody's boycotting with Target and Bud Light and all of this stuff. But to me, it's because most of the time it never feels like you see any meaningful decline from these companies. Like they're just so well insulated by money and stock and the endeavors that they've invested in that you don't see any change. But I think we're actually starting to see a fair amount of change from these companies because, like right now, The Little Mermaid may not even break even. It's serious. Like one of the most popular animated movies of all time, the live action movies, going to struggle to make a profit at all.
To be fair, why did they need to make a live action version of that movie? None of the live action movies that have come out of these like very popular like classic Disney animated films have seemed necessary, other than the fact that you're trying to cash in on some kind of nostalgia.
Yeah,
like,
the new one's way longer.
Why would you invest this money in something that no one asked for? No one was like, you know what? I love Ariel's unrealistically unattainable mermaid hair as a character, right? It's so beautiful and long. If we made it a live action movie, that would be good. Like, no, part of the fun is that it's like this animated world.
Yeah. Do you think this is an example of get woke, go broke, as they say? Or do you think this is the type of thing where they're just cutting back because for cost cutting measures? I actually think that we're finally starting to see the result of all these things going back. So last year, Lightyear and Strange Worlds both lost a total of I think it came up to $300 million. And a lot of the sentiment I would see was saying what is that to Disney? Like, what is $300 million to Disney? I was like, well, that's on my bad days. I'm like, yeah, what the hell? It doesn't even matter.
But if every new project they launch loses $10 to $300 million, they start to hurt after a while, right?
You can only do it for so long.
The trend of loss, it's like the moment of loss is calculable. You could probably write it off. But if it's that they are on a trend of losing 300 million, 200 million, 50 million, like they ruined Star Wars, man. This company had it coming.
Yep.
They deserve this.
I watched a video pointed out the other day that the very famous photo of Kathleen Kennedy wearing the shirt that says "The Force is female." Apparently, that was a Nike slogan first. That said, it was an Air Force One shoe that said "The Force is female" on it, and it's like a weird type of deja vu where a lot of people don't remember that now because the Kathleen Kennedy wearing the shirt thing is so iconic given how bad Star Wars became, and now they're making like another Rey Star Wars movie. Oh. Like, is there a way that you could see it? Like, how long would it take for a company like this? Because we always talk about boycotts. You want them to make a change to these companies. How much would have to change, and over how long of a time before you started trusting a company like this again? Because that's like, at the end, we have to ask the question, like, are we saying this to boycott because we want to go find something else, or are we expecting them to change their ways? I'm personally of the opinion that they don't change their ways, not in any way that's long term. How much of the company would have to change, and over how long before you were willing to start investing your time and money in a company again for something, maybe not Disney, but any company that you don't trust?
If they got a new CEO and then the CEO was vocal, like made the internet video talking, and I started to trust the person, and then they made one good movie, then I would start to pay more.
But similar to
you have to see both sides of it, the like personal leadership as well as the product.
Yeah.
Similar to Musk, right? I mean, like a lot of people who didn't trust, maybe still used Twitter, but didn't trust Twitter, came back tentatively because Elon Musk took over and seemed to be making active steps.
Yeah. And then he freed part of the software code, which was like, okay, so it's Elon who I like, and now it's activity that I like. So those two things together keep my interest. So I'm paying him $8 a month.
The ship is turning kind of thing. I feel like Disney is one of those companies, and it might just be because I grew up, I feel like, in the Disney golden era, but for a lot of people, Disney feels like this behemoth that could never die, right? It's even as it continued to start drifting into more sort of progressive or radical ideology, it ultimately is just such an institution, there's no way it could collapse. And I feel like so many things in society right now that we hold on a pedestal of ideology are unstable. We're seeing a big change in sort of media and creative endeavors. People are kind of looking for new sources. So for me, so there's this podcast called Blood and Business, which I really recommend. Two sisters run it. I've talked to you about it a couple times. And they do a 2-part episode on the Disney brothers, because it's Walt Disney, who was the younger brother, And then there was Roy Disney, who was sort of like the business mind person. And it's really interesting to hear their story of being these kids who grew up on a farm in Missouri. And one of them was just intensely creative and really loved this cartoon. The other one was like, I love you a lot and I want to support your dreams. And that's where this is born from. But it has been a long time since those were the people at the helm of this company. And for me, I don't know if it's wokeness or just the change in times, but if Disney were to die, I would be okay, right? Because maybe that allows something else that's more representative of the newest form of culture to rise to the top. And for me, hopefully, like, has values that I care about and stuff like that. But I just think that it's not a question of get woke, go woke. It's like, is there a natural time for all of these large institutions to come to an end?
Yeah. And you have to wonder, like, anytime business and creative endeavors kind of meet, you have to worry about what happens after someone passes on, right? So, like you said, what Disney is now is a long way off from what Walt envisioned of it back in the day. The same thing's happening with Tolkien and everything that's going on with Lord of the Rings. Once your creative works become the property of somebody who didn't have the insight, skill, or knowledge to understand what you created, which in a lot of cases, I wonder if anyone can do that. Like, can anyone that isn't you, who actively created something, can they truly understand what you made enough to be able to say, this is what's best course?
And why you made it. That's my thing. Like,
Yeah.
why were they doing this? What was the interest? What was the goal? I mean, once you start to get even one person removed, it starts to change a little bit. They read their own motivations into it.
There are examples of people taking like art from the past and reviving it better, like Dracula. I think Bram Stoker's Dracula was made in the modern age into a really good movie at one point. Maybe it was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Did they do that? These older stories. But they also, I don't think Dracula and Frankenstein were like the Lord of the Rings, or they weren't like Star Wars, these gigantic, epic, like, long tales and stories that were so well made and created in the public view. Like Frankenstein was back before TV.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. It's like a lot of those things are public domain that you just have the ability to make your own version of. You see that they're making a Snow White horror movie now, similar to Winnie the Pooh. They're making
you see that?
We had a let me make sure
I'm hearing all kinds of beeping.
I'm gonna have to send. Yeah, we had a power surge here.
Hi everyone, can you still hear us?
I'm gonna send a
Are you
message
with
to
us?
Andrew and make sure that we did not lose control of the.
Mary Shelley created Frankenstein in 1818.
And it's beautiful. It's interesting. But I think you're right. There is a place for bringing it into modern medium, right? Like, it went from being a book to being a movie.
I actually used the term revival, and I don't think Star Wars needed a revival. It was already alive and well by the time they aberrated it.
Well, and like a Star Wars, like when Star Wars was the big franchise, and they made a video game of it, right?
Yes, a bunch of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Atari
so like
made one.
that is kind of interesting, taking this one medium and shifting it to a new medium to tell similar stories. Like, that's what Dracula and Frankenstein becoming movies is, in my opinion. They're going from being books to being a visual experience, which is very different. I think remaking, like I was saying this at the top of this part, when you take a successful animated movie and say, we're going to make it live now, you're stripping away some of the things that were cherished about that movie. You're not taking it from being a movie to the newest form of medium that we have created as this new technologically advanced society. You're just making it another version of something that already exists. And of course, by comparison, at least in my opinion, it's worse because you take away the charm.
And for Disney, they've got competition with Universal. At least the theme parks they're building. I believe they're the ones doing Nintendo World. And Nintendo seems to be a brand that knows what they're doing as far as, the Mario movie did very, very well. And a lot of that stuff seems to be going that way. I do also wonder, because I think, at least not even in the context of business, but in the movie realm, I think we're going to be shifting away from a lot of those properties. And I think video game movies are going to end up being what becomes the next trend of adaptations. Like, we're going to start seeing more successful video game movies. Right now it's very, very hit or miss.
But it's doing the same thing that I was just saying Star Wars did. They took a movie, they made it a video game, and they capitalized on popularity by translating it into a new medium. If you take video games that are popular and translate them into movies, you're maybe going to carry that over. I mean, didn't they try that with Sonic the Hedgehog? Wasn't he a movie for a video game?
Both the Sonic movies are good.
Okay, and so they are taking stuff that's beloved, but not just making another Sonic video game, which could do fine. they're making it a new medium.
Well, they still make the video games, and there's more room for that.
But
with video
they are
games,
capturing a new audience by changing the medium. That's my argument here. I think that like people don't understand why some things grow in legacy. It's that you have translated them to the newest accessible version of technology.
We've got a $20 one right there from Overdressed. He says, it's also normal that film techniques evolve and you are able to show old stories in a new light. But Disney is now destroying the stories instead of enhancing them. Yeah, I've yet to see any example of these live action movies where the new medium justifies what they're doing. If anything, it's the opposite, meaning that if you watch The Lion King, the beauty of The Lion King isn't just the story, but it's the way that all of their faces are deeply expressive, and you actually lose that in the live action version of it. So they're not just redoing it, they're redoing it and making it worse rather than finding a way to enhance it.
Did Aladdin suck?
Aladdin was fine. Like I'm one of those people, like I thought they were all just kind of okay. Like I went to see The Little Mermaid and I'm just like, this is very clearly not for me. You're not the target demographic. I'm not the target demographic here. It's too long, it's bloated, but in general, I could understand why kids would like it. Like if I put my mind,
they like it more than the animated one.
I do wonder about that because I think a lot of it is like maybe if you raise your kids to like old media and to not put them through a barrage of like modern technology. So if you raise your kids watching old animation, they might like that. But I think that a lot of the new generation, like between everything they see in video games and the way technology is now, they might get bored of old animation styles.
No, I
don't think so.
I just disagree. I mean, the other example
I'm saying maybe. I have no idea.
I get what you're saying, but like my other example here is Pete's Dragon, right?
Yeah.
Pete's Dragon is a classic. It's animated originally, right?
Yes.
Am I wrong?
See it.
They made a live action version of it with CGI, and the dragon looks super cool. I mean, it looks very much like it might come from Lord of the Rings or one of these modern movies. But I was babysitting my younger sisters, put on the live action. They hated it. They were terrified because it doesn't. So part of again, it depends on who your target audience is. If you make a live action movies for adults, maybe there's an appeal. But for children, when you have these emotionally intense subjects, like some of what cushions the blow and makes it digestible to them is the fact that they're animated, like you're saying, like you can see expressions on the lions' faces that obviously you wouldn't see in real life.
Pete's Dragon was like a movie, but it had cartoon in it. I'm watching it right now. The dragon's smiling. He's very happy.
The dragon is a cartoon, but in the live action one, which is very beautifully shot, it's CGI, I guess. Like he looks like a more
real
lizardy,
dragon.
real type thing.
One of the questions that, like, did you guys see the thing on Twitter about the reviewer from, I believe it was the Los Angeles Times or the New York Times, that said that the movie needed more kink?
What movie?
The Little Mermaid. Who
is this movie for?
Exactly. So no, in one of the questions he raises in the movie, it's really funny. You read it, and it's this very, very progressive dude who's raising a lot of the same concerns that people on the other side have. He's just phrasing them differently. But one of the things he points out, he goes, are these movies made for 9-year-olds? Or are they made for 35-year-olds? Because they can't decide. They can't decide, is this movie made for the 9-year-old audience who want to go see their first princess movie? Certainly at the theater, there was a lot of families there with kids. Or is it made for the 35-year-old Disney adult who wants to be able to escape from the real world into a modern adaptation of what they were raised on? And until Disney answers that question, I don't think they're going to be able to make any progress with these. Or at least the message of these live action movies is always going to be a bit muddled. Mm-hmm. They're not going to hit the way they want them to.
I'm thinking of Battlestar Galactica because I would say it's mostly nostalgia. They're building nostalgia for the people that saw it when they were 9 and now they're 30 or 40. But like Battlestar Galactica I think the new one was way better. I didn't see the old one, to be honest. But what I heard is that the new one was so good that it didn't even matter that there was an old one from the 70s. And so it wasn't, and it turned out not to be a nostalgia piece, although it still works. The name, will bring in people in their 50s and stuff that remember that show. There's
a lot of shows where they fundamentally change so much about it that it's barely connected at all. Like here's a funny example. The original, Gone in 60 Seconds is nothing like the 2001 with Nicolas Cage in it. It's like a lot of times it's really just in name only. Mm-hmm. Something like that. So I don't know. We will see with Disney. For me, I would like to see a company like Disney change. I don't think they will. I don't think that they're going to change in any meaningful way.
You mean change for the better?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to make any meaningful changes for the better. I think they're going to continue on this path for the foreseeable future. But we will see. All right, guys, what would you like to see first? Would you like to see cute of the day or cringe of the day?
I say cringe. Let's get it over with.
Good.
All right.
Want to get cringe over with?
Let's cringe hard.
All right. So for I got one today, and these are by the way, Mary provided all these. She gave me. She's like, I have given you. She basically sent me like a folder of cringe because she is the cringe connoisseur here. So this is one of the cringes of the day. I'm going to put it on screen here. It's this is from somebody on Twitter. So here's the video.
Hey, babe. Okay, so rock, paper, scissors, shoe. And if you win, you get to kiss me. Are you ready?
No, I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah. That poor lady,
Hey, babe.
she was going for the attention and she didn't get any of the attention she wanted from that guy.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of these. There's one girl who's like in workout gear and goes up to like a police officer and she's like, what would you rate me? 1 out of 10. He's like, I'm married. And she's like, no, but like, what would you rate me? He's like, I'm married. She's like, but if you weren't married, what would you rate me? And he's like, 1. The only person I love is my wife. And like, it is inching away from her the whole time. She's clearly like, I thought you were gonna say I was good looking.
There's another one where a lady's like talking to this guy and she's doing like an anime voice and the guy's like, why are you talking like that?
Oh,
like,
that's awesome.
The whole time. Like, don't give these ladies attention. And then there's this one that says, you dropped this king.
I like these videos right now. Some people are doing, or there's some, I don't know the name of his series, but he'll like go up to someone and say like, basically like, what would you rate yourself? Or like, I don't remember, get some question, takes a picture of them, shows the next person. And so like, there's one of this girl, he asked her and she's like, I'd rate myself a 10. And then she went to the next guy and the guy is like, I'd rate like a 4. And they take his picture to the next person. They're like, oh, he's like a 7. You know what I mean? It's kind of interesting to see the perception of like how you see yourself versus how other people see it. There are some people who rate themselves really low and the next person's like, no, they're good looking. You know what I mean? It's just like this, a fun thought experiment on the internet.
I've been forced to reevaluate how I rate movies here too now because I keep saying like a 7 is average and everyone's like 7's above average.
Would a 5 be average?
I guess a 5 would be out. I just don't know. I guess like I don't give a lot of 5s, but I give a lot of 7s.
But 5 is halfway between 1 and 10.
But isn't it like in the context of school that would be failing though? So I guess I just don't think of failing as average.
But it's not. It's like I think you've decided to think of them as like if you were to rank them.
Yeah. Well, so it's like I give a lot of movie 7s because I'm like it's definitely not an 8.
It's like a C.
Like so it's like isn't a C average?
Yeah.
Or is a B average? I don't know.
So are you ranking them 1 through 10 or are you grading them? Because those are different scales.
See, that's the thing. Maybe my problem is that I'm giving them the same scale when I shouldn't be giving them
you got to separate those out.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 is average.
Okay. Well, then, like, yeah, because I got like a super chat yesterday where somebody was like, you need to fix your rating scale. I'm like, this is why I don't give movies ratings.
I think you should get a big poster board and then like have, one with a box next to it all the way down. And every time you go to a movie or watch one or whatever, like have to hold yourself accountable to putting them in this 1 through 10. And then at the end of the year, when you do your like New Year's wrap up that I'm always asking for, you can be like, here is the poster board. As you can see, these were the ones that were in the middle.
I think 5.5 would be average on a scale
Okay.
from 1 to 10 because that's 4.5 in both directions. If it was on a scale from 0 to 10, it would be 5.
Oh yeah,
Would be average.
do you ever give movies zeros? That's the real question.
I almost gave this movie with Jennifer Lopez called The Mother a 0. If I could give a movie a 0, it would be
Okay,
that
so
movie.
change my poster board to include a 0 spot,
Okay.
and then 5 is the middle.
Yeah.
He's right.
It's rough for me, man, because whenever I'm rating this, and then like, see, to me, I really feel like if I could give a rating scale, it'd be this. It'd be there's one concrete way for me to tell you whether I liked a movie or not. Would I watch it again? And in the last 2 years, there's been exactly one thing that I've watched more than once. So isn't that
Top Gun Maverick.
No, I've only
I'm
no.
just guessing.
Never mind. Yes, I did watch that when it went to streaming, but I didn't go back to the theaters to see it. But like, how often do you see new media these days that really hits like that, like stays with you the way that stuff that you saw when you were younger?
What did you
stayed
want to
with
watch again?
I watched the show Reacher twice when it came, but that was in 2021. Like that was like over 2 years ago now.
That's crazy.
So it's
Number
like,
one that was 2 years ago is wild.
like how often do you see stuff that you want to watch multiple times? I think that's also part of what social media has done, right? Like everything's disposable.
I think I have the opposite experience, which is that I don't watch a lot of new stuff, and so if I am putting something on, I'm more likely to want to rewatch something.
Well,
I
yeah,
really
everything that I'm
enjoyed.
watching.
Whereas,
that I
like
watch
for
is-
your job, you end up exposing yourself to lots of new stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, I only want to rewatch stuff.
I've
I
become-
generally am not interested in seeing something new.
everything that I watch, like everything I watch when I'm done with work, when it's not work stuff, is stuff I've seen before and rewatch. Outside of like that, like there's some shows that but if it's a show that I'm not rewatching, it's old. Like I'm not taking the chance and risking it on something new because the hit and miss rate is just so bad right now with all the new stuff that like people are like, you should watch this, you should watch this. I'm like, dude, I don't have it in me right now, man.
What's your strategy, Ian?
I used to rewatch movies that I liked, like Wayne's World.
Yes!
Big one. I watched that 30 times or something. Aladdin, I liked a lot.
By the way,
the cartoon?
yeah.
there
Did
is
you watch the live action one?
No, I haven't seen it. It was Will Smith played the genie.
Yep.
It was just so weird looking. Robin Williams, man.
yeah, but like, who do you get without Robin Williams? Who do you hire?
Why did you make it live action? I'm not gonna
I know.
beat this dead horse.
It's a
over and
cartoon.
over,
Like
but
he flies on a magic carpet. He's a big puff of smoke. Like unless the
he
CG
like
is
contorts his body.
epic.
Yeah, he just doesn't work.
Music I listen to and re-listen to
Yeah.
a lot because I'm studying it and I learn new things about it, how to mimic it, and so I become a better performer. I did that with acting too because I mimic the actors. I'll watch the actor over and over and over in a different mood. I see a different aspect of their acting. But lately, I haven't. They're just movies aren't coming out that I like lately. Not that are like in front of me, and it's harder to. There's so much that it's harder to find the good ones. So I'm waiting until after the fact when they're like. And then you see a movie made 300 million, but it's not necessarily means it's good.
I think that's why I liked watching documentaries so much because it's like you're already interested in the topic, or you read about the topic and you think, oh, that could be interesting. Like it's much easier for me to tell if I'm going to be interested in a documentary than it is with like a film, because so often you've got these trailers that aren't really like accurate depictions of what the movie's about, or a description that's not really fair, like not totally, interesting. There have been some movies that you read the description and I'm like, I would never watch this, and then I love the movie, and the reverse is true also. So I think what you're saying is interesting.
Yeah, it's the sad thing is 300 million's like, if it's a summer movie, that isn't even enough money to break even these days. That's the sad part of that. So, all right, let's do cute of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We do have some submissions from you guys, so here we go. This is from that was from yesterday. Let me move on here. Go here.
What do you do with this when people are listening not with the video? Do you have to describe to them in detail?
You have to describe it to the video. So this is from Olivia Claire. She says, this is
hey,
Tripod.
girl.
He has decided I am his favorite human and follows me when I go outside. He's a real homie. That's a duck, and it's very cute.
Is it her duck or just
Is it just
one of her neighbors?
I think it's just a neighbor's duck, and it's a very cute duck.
That is cute.
That is a very cute looking duck.
I thought when you said that
buddy. How you doing? You look very handsome today.
I like it.
I thought when you said tripod, it was going to be a dog with 3 legs.
I know, right?
I'm not going to lie to you. That's what I thought that was going to be.
We went to the park, Kara and I, last week, and Waterworks Park in Ohio, and they're walking down the river, and there were these 2 ducks, or I think they were geese or something, but they were just like, yeah, so I started mimicking them, going, yeah, back at them, and then they started swimming over towards us real slow, and then got up on the ground, and were looking at us, and like kind of walking towards us real slow, like,
They're trying to figure you out.
3 feet per minute, yeah.
What do you think you said to them in geese language? Do you think you said something friendly, or do you think they were trying to be like, what are you doing in our area?
It felt like we were working out together. Like trading, like they were doing 10 reps and then I would do 10 reps.
Okay. I love it.
Also, guys, there is a special Ian themed crisis party today that I want Ian to hear, so you should help us get there. You're gonna love it, buddy.
Do you want me to read some of these super chats, by the way?
We're almost there. We're gonna get to it. So we got one more cute of the day. This one here is from Danny on Twitter. This is Cam. He enjoys sitting down in the middle of long walks and hiding the ball when he's done playing.
Cam.
That is adorable.
That is a cute dog.
So
what kind of dog do you think that is?
That looks very messy, though.
You could tell me anything, and I would believe you that was that dog's breed.
He's
got like sort of I'm going to describe it if you're listening via non-video format. He's got sort of one of those mustachy things that I think of with like Westies, but he's more like Labrador in the body.
Yes.
But he doesn't look like a doodle thingy.
I was going to say, is it a doodle?
Is he a doodle?
Have you seen the St. Bernadoodles? Those things are amazing.
That seems crazy
No.
to me. I feel like Labradoodles are going to become less popular, but people like them because they don't shed and they're, I guess, somewhat hypoallergenic.
That sounds nice.
I don't know. But that's a good boy, That's a handsome.
This guy here?
Majestic.
Oh, yeah. Look at that long, gorgeous hair. It's like the hair looks soft.
Yeah.
All right. So, guys, if you have submissions for Cute of the Day, I do have you tag me on Twitter, hashtag PCC Pets. Tag me in it. It's always easier for me to find if you tag me in the post, and we will get to that. So let's just get right into it. Let's talk about Jamie Foxx, because I'm anxious to get this topic over with, because I don't want YouTube to get mad at us.
Why would they get mad at you, Brett?
Why? Why would they get mad at us? Okay, so if you don't know, Jamie Foxx, over a month ago, he's been in the hospital. There have been various stories about what it is that he had. Did he have a stroke? Did he have a heart attack? Did he have all of these things? Well, an article came out because there was a guy who went on with Dr. Drew and basically said that it had to do with a certain medical procedure that you've been told that you had to get because of something that happened in 2020 that I don't know if we're allowed to talk about. But this is what it says. So speaking on Dr. Drew Pinsky's online show Ask Dr. Drew, AJ Benza insisted his insider was someone in the room with firsthand knowledge of Jamie's hospitalization. He said Jamie had a blood clot in his brain after he got the shot. What the shot is, I'm not going to tell you what that is. It could have been a shot of tequila. Who knows? He did not want the shot, but the movie set he was on, the studio made him get it. That is scary. Like, we're back into that discussion about forced medical procedures, right? Like, who has the right to tell you what to do with your body with an experimental tequila shot, right? Nobody wants a shot of tequila.
Or you could forego the tequila. I know that means foregoing the job, but I think if you're Jamie Foxx, maybe you have the financial resources to say no to this one.
You'd think, right? Like,
if that's your value.
And they said that he was acting like, again, we cannot confirm this. As far as I'm concerned, this could be a conspiracy theory, but this guy went on a show with a very large platform and had this discussion, so I think we should at least talk about it. So in this case, he's saying that Jamie Foxx didn't want to get it, but he had to. And that's a problem when they're making you do something that you don't want to do. But like you said, he's got the money. Did he have to do, could he have opted out? Contractually, he might have been required to at that point without paying back huge amounts, maybe, of money.
I feel like you're going to pay a lot more right now if you believe the tequila shot and this situation are linked, yes?
Yep. So it says he formerly worked as a columnist for the New York Daily News and is a host of E-Series Mystery and Scandals. He says the blood clot in the brain caused him at that point to be partially paralyzed and blind. This is contradicted with something that his family said about 2 weeks ago, where they said, no, he's in recovery. He was actually out playing pickleball recently. So
what if he's in recovery without his eyesight, though?
Could you play pickleball without? You
could play it poorly. If you were partially paralyzed, like if you were having a hard time moving your left arm and you maybe couldn't see very well out of your left eye, but then they gave you a pickleball racket and they're like, here, because it's like a form of recovery if you're playing really soft and really easy. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like you do have to defer to the family in these scenarios, like someone being like, I have a source who I can't tell you about who has knowledge of it.
Sources with an inside knowledge.
It makes me a little bit more skeptical. Not that journalist, I hope they did their due diligence, but
I'm always skeptical. You know
what I mean? Like,
one of the hardest things to take nowadays is when people say unnamed sources.
Right. Okay, so if you were to tell me hey, I talked to someone who knows someone and this is what's going on. Yeah. Versus if I talk to someone who realistically has regular contact with that person.
People are asking what the F is pickleball. Pickleball is it's
a hot trendy sport.
It's a very trendy sport right now.
Watch out for your tennis courts. They're changing them all to pickleball courts.
It's for yuppies. It's like the mini.
I love that you said that because I was be like, I played it. It's fun. I look exactly like someone who would be into it.
It's like the mini. It's like the mini. It looks like table tennis.
It's like table tennis or also like smaller tennis. I like it because you can play it at all kinds of levels of.
It's like tennis and ping pong.
I've seen super intense guys get really into it who are like super athletic, and then I've seen just ladies out for a hangout and chat play it. It works both ways, and I think it's good to find active things to do outside.
What's another reason this is an interesting discussion is we're going through a writer's strike right now in Hollywood. And that's relevant with the Disney discussion too. Disney's losing all this money, and now people are saying give us more money for these bad movies that we're writing that nobody likes.
It's a weird threat. It reminds me of BAM.
Yes, but in general right now, what's going on in Hollywood is the mandates for tequila shots. We'll keep calling them. We're going to keep saying tequila shots. Actually ended on May 12th. So they're no longer required to get the tequila shot, to be tequila shotted, nor are they required to mask up on sets. Unless you're in certain part of productions. I guess if you are in an intimate scene, they have to do a check to see if you have it, the COVID beforehand. You can say COVID, right? I can say COVID.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't.
Okay.
You can't say COVID.
Okay. But yeah, so they're saying that this is an article that was not that old, and it says the mandate has become extremely controversial over the last couple of months. In February, Woody Harrelson, he blasted the protocols as nonsensical and unfair because they're an affront to liberty. Like, is this one of those things where it's just the price you pay to work in an industry like Hollywood? What did you expect from them, right? Like, unfortunately for Jamie Foxx, the sad thing is like he's going to be paying for this for a long time. I hope that we find out later that this is if it's exactly if it's this. I have no idea. I cannot say for sure, but it's scary because we're seeing a lot of people in Hollywood now pretending like they were always against these mandates. Like the worst is Fran Drescher, the head of the Screen Actors Guild, talking about how she's like against mandates. I'm like, well, were you really?
Well, and she's in a position to have led a negotiation on that front. Like that's what bothers me. Fran Drescher came out after the fact saying like, hey, it seems like this is unfair to people who may have questions or whatever else. Like she could have, as the head of SAG or whatever, stepped forward and said like, even though I personally support it, I understand where we need to have room for all people with different views on this, and she's just late to the game. I feel that, I mean, a lot of people do stuff like this. They're like after the fact being like, oh no, I didn't like it, and even if that was true the whole time, they just don't want to say anything. Like we just can't keep functioning this way, you know?
Like every time something anytime somebody gets sick or something happens, everyone has to immediately jump to whether it was related to this or not. And that gets tiresome after a while. Like you guys, like there have been actors on IRL and people have been involved who've talked about how like the culture of fear around Hollywood was insane during COVID, but not just that, but it became an entire industry where testing is now an industry where there's money to be made from the testing kits from the people who had to get hired to stay on set to do the testing. Like nobody wants to, like whether people want to admit it or not, the same thing is true of like charitable causes and activism. Like nobody wants to do their job so well they're out of work. Like if your job is to parrot pet causes, that cause needs to stay around. Otherwise, you kind of literally put yourself out of a job.
Followers don't want to make themselves obsolete because they find security in the jobs, but leaders tend to look to make themselves obsolete so they can move on to the next project.
Yeah. Yeah, for Jamie Foxx, it's also like another reason to be skeptical. And again, I want to be fair and I want to push back on the article as much as possible because it does seem like there's plenty to push back on. So the guy goes on to link COVID tequila mandates to Jamie Foxx's reported outburst on set at his upcoming movie. I don't buy that. Not one bit. He says, I'm thinking, is that why he blew up on set a week before his medical emergency happened? The veteran journalist asked Dr. Drew. Is that why he fired 3 or 4 people? That is a reach beyond all.
I just don't understand the connection. Like he was mad about something. He's in a position to fire people, yet he had to get this. I don't get it.
Yeah. It says in May, Jamie Foxx's daughter, Corinne Foxx, shut down reports that his family was preparing for the worst. I mean, I really did think that something bad, even worse, had happened because he'd been in the hospital for so long.
I think something bad has happened. Yeah. Clearly, what kind of hospital is he in?
And they're saying like he's in like outpatient care now at like a facility, like
a rehab.
Yeah, like at a rehab facility. But it's sad because Jamie Foxx is like one of the most talented people in the industry.
He's pretty young, right?
He's can't be older than 50.
Also, his name is Eric Marlon Bishop. Changed his name to Jamie Foxx when he became an actor.
I think Marlon's kind of a cool name.
Marlon's a great name. That's a fantastic.
Is that what you're gonna name one of your hockey kids?
Yes, someday.
Do you promise?
Someday I will. The Marlins is a baseball team, so maybe we have to come up with a hockey team name instead. The other thing about Jamie
Foxx,
the other thing that was sad because I'd also do a thing called Wholesome of the Day sometime here, and Jamie Foxx just donated an entire basketball court to his hometown. Nice. So it's like he's this nice dude who's doing all these good deeds, and
you being like he's a nice dude makes me think back to early pop culture days when we would talk about Keanu Reeves like all the time because he's just a nice guy. Yeah, Brett would always be like, he's just the best. I want Keanu Reeves to come on this podcast so badly just so he and Brett can talk about being nice.
So is it that or is it Tom Cruise that I stand more? I don't know, but the point
I was super neutral on Tom Cruise, and you were sort of an intense fan, and then somehow that made me semi-skeptical of Tom Cruise and made you an even bigger fan.
Yeah, I have to push back.
For no specific reason.
I have to push back because people are pushing back on
against
me.
my neutrality on him.
Yeah. Well, we do have the Tom Cruise candle up there
True.
that's hanging out with everybody. He's hanging out there. Like it's one of those things for me. Like I see these requirements and I see a lot of actors and you see pushback and I wonder how they. Like I worry now. I worry about having to like, will I have a job someday? Like I'm not going to have a job. I don't think that we'll have a requirement for this because by the time that ever happens, if I'm ever to have to work somewhere else, you know, God willing, I hope that doesn't ever have to happen. Like I'm guessing by then the mandates would have been pulled at most of these places. But like, does the government still require it?
No, the federal government struck down all of their mandates for it. So, I don't know.
So it's just sad to see, and it's a lot of speculation. But for Jamie Foxx, I hope that this is not what happened, and that he's on the track to get better. Because it's very sad to see stuff like that happen to somebody who's so young and talented. Like he's literally was on a TV show and a movie at the time that this happened. So Nick Cannon had to cover for him on the TV show he was doing, and they had to continue filming the movie he was on with his stunt double because he was just in the middle of all these productions. Oh, also, they didn't name, like, that's the other thing that was suspicious is the guy who gave this report wouldn't name the movie set that required him. They wouldn't name the studio or the movie that was going to require.
Known?
No, it's not. So it's like all of those questions left unanswered. I'm skeptical of whether that's the reason for this. So we'll see. But it does say something about the authoritarianism of Hollywood that they're going to make people do this stuff and also how scared all of them were. So, all right, we got some super chats there, Hannah Claire.
Yeah, we do. So I'm going to start from the oldest ones.
Yeah, just back up to
Corey
the top.
Anderson says, I love Hannah Claire. All women should aspire to be like her. Thanks so much. That's nice and probably not true.
That was quite
nice
a compliment
nonetheless.
right off the bat there.
Yeah.
Also,
I
guys,
laughed when this one came in. I saw it. Martin Santiago said, hashtag start a family Brett. I'm really lobbying Brett to, just meet a nice lady and produce some children.
She's there.
Well, I'll get right on that.
If you could put some more effort
nice
in, I would
ladies
I'm not
are
getting
us.
any younger here. I need some Brett. The thing is, Brett talks about his like generational family of like men who coach their little league hockey teams. And it's so cute, and I just want Brett to have this life as a hockey dad.
My dad was a hockey coach.
And then his grandpa
yes.
would make him. Was your dad who made the frames?
My dad made the frames.
And then he made the frames out of the hockey stick he used that season.
Did he coach your
That's
team?
precious.
Yes,
that's
not
awesome.
all the years, but some of the years.
That's
he
badass.
coached.
Did he give you favor?
No. My dad. If anything, the opposite.
Okay.
in our family, it's like you go out of your way to make sure that you don't get favor.
That's nice.
And then your grandpa like built you a like little model, like a car you could ride around in.
He built me a replica of Kit from Knight Rider that I
Sweet.
could ride
I'm
around
telling you,
in.
Brett is destined to meet a nice lady, have some hockey kids, and get a wood shop and make them all sorts of crafts.
Well,
I'm excited for it.
I'll have to work on that.
But then I'm going to say, Martin Santiago, I'm going to skip for a second, responded later, okay, never mind. Bam is making me not want a family, OMG. So he sort of wants you to have a family, but he's nervous.
It's just don't do crack cocaine.
That's
and
the
try and cut the drinking out of your diet.
Words of wisdom from Ian Crossland. Like, have a family. Just don't
when you
smoke
become
crack.
a dad, it's time to give
You
up
don't
the
need to
crack.
hurt people to be an entertainer.
Gabby Hayes says, this is the best cast for a PCC in Mary's absence. Ian, that was my favorite intro you've done. Liked what you said on IRL last night. Good to see you.
What did you say last night?
I don't
Summarize
remember.
everything you said for the 2 hours you're on IRL.
Let me calculate.
No, like it's one of those things. Like if you have to talk 5 days a week for multiple hours a day.
I said I was what do you call a magician without the magic? It's Ian. Turned out it was Ian all along.
Stop, that's so funny.
That's amazing.
I'll find my magic.
But it's true that like when you have to talk for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, or 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, like people are like, oh, you said this in this episode. I'm like, bro, maybe. Like, sounds like me, but I can't confirm. Like
Yeah.
like a lot of times, people will push back, and one of the worst things that can happen is like when people that disagree with you misrepresent what you said in an argument, like in like a segment that you talked about. Like if you're on like a show like this, and someone's like, oh, you said this about this, and then they give the most uncharitable interpretation of whatever it is you said. Like I've had to learn to be a little bit more confident with like knowing the type of person I am, because you can't have people pushing back. It's like, that's when you said this horrible thing. I'm like, no, I didn't. Like if I said something like that, it's because you're giving the worst possible interpretation to something I said.
I'm really good at knowing what I didn't say. I'm very good at that. If people create a false quote, I can pretty much photographic memory, that thing. But
Yeah.
remembering exactly what I did say tends to be a bit more challenging.
Yeah.
I get annoyed when I'll like sometimes ask questions that I have an opinion on, but I am presenting the question because I want to hear everyone else in the room, and people will be like,
It's Ian.
Let's go!
"Are you a werewolf?" A part of that?
Wait for it.
I gotta do this party!
What was that from? Okay, so I there's a story. It was like the middle of the night, and I get a message from Carter, and he goes, "Dude, you have to make a crisis party out of this." And it's just you saying "party," and I'm like, "What is that from?"
All you gotta do is party. I don't know, man. I just made it up on the spot. It sounded like
From Cast Castle or something? Or
I was like, Carter, you want to do some pop culture crisis screams? He was like, oh hell yeah.
Yes.
Christian Bale. I mean, I love Christian. Is just. I was kind of channeling Christian Bale. I was like, what would Christian, like how psycho would he get in its most psycho? Let's do some of that.
The crisis party before this was literally him yelling at the guy.
Oh,
from
it
the
was
set of-
Christian. Yeah. That's part of why I was like, I'm going to do something like that.
Yeah, from when Christian Bale was yelling at the guy in the set of Terminator Salvation.
So I created that, and then I just yelled random words, which turned out to be party. Let's party.
And then I turned it into the crowd. Like Ian sent me that. I'm like, yes, this is.
Yes,
this
let's
is
do more. I'll do
awesome.
more.
That's awesome.
Dude, yes, we got to get back in the.
Stuff like
Let's.
I
hold
love
on.
that you and Carter are like on the side being like, we're in charge of the crisis party now.
No, I told Carter, I said, can you create me like unique crisis parties? Because some people don't like I like the chaotic ones because it makes everybody jump, and I get a kick out of making everybody jump. But some people want like a more music style one that actually sounds like something you'd hear at a party. Nothing that I make is something you'd hear at a party unless it was some type of torture party.
I like the ones you make because they make me jump, but also sometimes it's hard because I can't hear them clearly.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel like I miss the like, because you have obviously put time and effort into it, and
Yeah.
I wish I could understand it. Okay.
Let's hold off on the rest, and we will come back after next topic. So
Okay.
we're going to move on, guys. So how do you feel about censorship, and how do you feel about comedy? That is a question I want you to ask, because MSNBC is calling for comedians to censor themselves. They have some handy rules that they've provided for us, being the good people, the honest people at MSNBC that they are, that they're saying we should implement for the sake of everybody else, right? So let's go through these rules first and foremost. The big part of this they talk about cancel culture and how they don't think cancel culture is real. But as we know, that if you're a part of the establishment, like MSNBC is, it's not that cancel culture isn't real. It's that you literally have no unique opinions that are risky enough to get you in trouble. Right? Like they reference Sarah Silverman here, and they even point out like she got in trouble, for her blackface joke like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But here are some of the rules that they've put into place for you to follow. It says, first, your observational humor must slay. Well, they lose credit right away for using slay in a sentence as adults. On this score, I commend her reflection, they're talking about Sarah Silverman, on the fragility of testicles, whose reputation for manly toughness she opines in as undeserved. I applaud her confession. That is my biggest fear in getting dementia, she says. She says her biggest fear, this is Sarah Silverman, and her biggest fear is masturbating in public, because that's very edgy humor, I guess. They also say that you can always punch up, but you should never punch down. Those are rules 3 and 4. So what's the funniest about this is what they list as the groups you can punch up on, which are Nazis, Hitler, and the Christian right.
No, Nazis are not stronger and more powerful than you. There's no punching up on Nazis. Nazis are below you. You punch down against Nazis.
It's cool to single out one religion that you can punch on.
You're
That
only
seems
allowed
crazy to me.
You're only allowed to insult one religion. That's
Punching up is about insulting those in power, not about those you hate. Yep. What the hell?
I mean, they're saying at least the Christian right is in power.
Yeah. There is
Also,
one of the funniest
simultaneously,
delusions.
it's a fringe movement.
It's one of the funniest delusions of Twitter and the mainstream media, where they live under this specter of the Christian right as if it's this big authoritative group in America these days. We know that that's not the truth. We know
Also,
that.
the best part of comedy is the rules. I've always thought that. The more regulation you have, the better the comedy.
There's nothing I like more than going up to do a comedy routine and thinking, what can't I say today? And they say don't punch down. And fourth, punch yourself and your group in the face. There's Jewish. They basically saying like you can insult yourself. It's the same concept to stay in your own lane. You're allowed to insult yourself. That makes sense to me. I have no problem with self-deprecating humor. You're allowed to make fun of people in your group. So this is why Hollywood loves this. You know why? Because they love insulting white people because it's white people that just are constantly self-flagellating all the time in Hollywood, which is a big part of their business model, which is white people. Am I right? Here's the thing. You should be able to make fun of them. But the problem arises when you're allowed to make fun of one group, but not another.
It's just boring. You know what I mean? Like, it's obviously slanted to be okay to attack certain people and only certain types of ethnicities or cultures. And on top of that, like, everyone ends up saying the same thing because no one's allowed to move outside the box.
They talk about, they're talking about her rules here in Sarah Silverman. They say free speech purists and libertarians might respond to this 5-step program by fulminating voluntary censorship. Slippery slope. Isn't art about liberty, man? I love even their snarky comments make me want to drop kick. If I could drop kick a newspaper or a news network, I would drop kick MSNBC or any of these places because they're annoying. Not the people. If I could drop kick a sign of MSNBC, I would. It says, but man, perhaps comedians ought to temporarily ease off the unnuanced and even Sarah Silverman's more nuanced punch down shtick. So they're saying they're pulling the ladder up behind them, saying they were allowed to do it beforehand. She's made her money now. Now she's Sarah Silverman. She's big, famous. She's got all of her corporate backing. But now you can't make those same jokes because of some vague notion of what? The greater good, I guess?
Who even knows?
Like, it kind of makes me sad to think that that's where this media's gone. And it proves why it's so inauthentic, because there was a time you could make an argument in the 90s, in the 2000s, when Hollywood was subversive because there was more of a Christian morality to society at that time. Whether we're talking when Harry Potter was being, taken out of schools, it was being requested to be removed from schools because of witchcraft. There was a time when Hollywood was what was hip, what pushed back on the majority of the country, but that's not the case anymore. They are the all-encompassing shtick of weird moralism. They just moralize in a different way. Now it's just you have to obey us because of, I guess, pride and because of inclusion, right? You're not allowed to be you're not allowed to disclude anyone anymore unless you're, I guess, a white Christian conservative, right? Thoughts?
It's stupid. It's boring. It's unsurprising that the rules for censorship are coming from MSNBC. It's unsurprising that MSNBC is specifically against Christian nationalists, I guess. I don't... Also, why are they regulating comedy? I thought you were a news channel. I don't really get any of this. It's also like, oh, this mega corporation that has a clear bias is acting on that bias. And you're like, oh, cool. I thought this was the case. Makes sense. I've never really been into Sarah Silverman. I know she was kind of a powerhouse in her day. I've never really followed her stuff. So that's sort of neutral to me. I don't know if you have any feelings about this.
Personally, I like Sarah a lot. I didn't know her. I don't know her. I haven't hung out with her or anything. Back in 2007, I appreciated that.
How
she
do
was
you
kind of
feel
vocal
about
the
rules
war.
in comedy?
The internet age has changed a lot of the dynamics of humanity. The ability for people to drum up a crowd, a mob, and then harass a human overnight now didn't exist 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So people are scrambling to try and prevent mob control, and some of the ways they're doing this to try and make rules about what you can and can't say. And but I think that kind of stuff upsets people if they're told I can't form a mob. That's my right in the United States is to form groups. We're allowed to group up and come together in public. And if you want to call it a mob, you can call it a mob. But as long as we're not violent, we have the right to come together. And so the censorship stuff is kind of preventing that and causing people to go underground and then group up underground, and then that can get much more dangerous.
Far more dangerous. Also, having all the ideas out there is the best way to dispel bad ideas is to be able to push back against it. And comedy oftentimes is used as a way of speaking truth to power in a way that regular people can't do. Like Ryan Long does great comedy that ends up having a lot. Like do you remember when he did Woke Racist and they're like the same person? That was a fantastic commentary on the culture that we were living in that was done in a humorous way that's able to push back in a way that if he had done that in a way that wasn't comedy, he would have put people, their shackles would have been put up. It
was so brilliant. Like it was him and Danny. Danny was the woke, and then Ryan was the racist, and Danny would be like, he's all the woke guy. He's like, I think that black people should have their own bathrooms and have their own, and then Ryan, the racist, is like,
yes.
Oh yeah, they should definitely be split up and we should definitely be segregated and have our own space. It was like, oh my God, that's so brilliant.
Like showing horseshoe theory, like how horseshoe theory works in a way that can allow multiple people, maybe from different belief systems, to come together and realize that we live in absurd times, and it's through comedy that's possible. But if we were operating under Sarah Silverman's rules, he wouldn't have been allowed to do that because the commentary he was doing would have been punching down.
So these are Sarah's rules
I think
that
it's weird.
MSNBC's
Like
making a story about?
We have a Democratic president in office, but that would be punching down if you were to comment on left-leaning progressive people. Like,
can't do it.
I thought you guys were sort of you have one chamber and you have the presidency, so you guys are sort of a dominant force, I would say.
Also, it's hilarious because all celebrities should be fair game just by economics alone. Because if their position in society means that it would always be punching up on them. But now you're not allowed to criticize celebrities either, because of vague characteristics and inclusion, and because celebrities get mad when you call them names and have to go. Did you see the thing where apparently on the Rings of Power set they had a therapist because of racist backlash, which is insane. They got them a therapist on set because people said mean things about them on the internet. Yeah. You're telling me that
They should have just confiscated all their phones and kept them off social media.
Exactly.
I personally don't like insulting people as comedy. It's easy and it's dirty, and I don't feel good about myself when I do it, and it makes the group peer pressure, and now you're the stupid one because everyone's laughing at you. I don't like doing that to people. It happened to me when I was a kid. I don't like it, but I don't want to be told that I can't. I just had to come to that understanding on my own that it's not the best way to make people laugh.
Yeah. Right, and commentate with this Ryan Long sketch, pointing out sort of the hypocrisy in what you're doing, not insulting you in some sort of stupid way. He's not saying, oh, progressives are all ugly. He's pointing out that some of the things they say actually align with these people that they say they hate. And that's interesting, right? That makes you think, and hopefully would make them think about their actions. It
also proves how disingenuous the article is, because they would label that as unnuanced when it's actually very nuanced commentary on what you're doing. I really do think that the future of comedy, it ends up being something like what Joe Rogan is doing, where he has to start his own establishment and do that. And a lot of people are
just don't go on MSNBC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
Leave that one behind.
People are doing their own thing. Remember, Andrew Schultz had to buy back the rights to his comedy, his live comedy bit that he did, because they didn't want to air certain jokes. And he's like, I'm not letting you cut my piece out there. That's my work. I want my work to remain whole. And what I found is that if you believe in what you're doing, and you refuse to be censored, and you put in the work that allows that to happen, meaning it's going to be harder, you're not going to have all the backing that comes from having one of these companies, put the material out for you. People will come and support you. Mm-hmm. People will show up for your work if you're good at what you do and you're authentic. But they don't want authenticity. What they want is people to conform among this amorphous blob that is what we would call the mainstream media now. And that just leads to a bunch of boring content that's all the same. All the humor that they talk about with Sarah Silverman that's basically okay is all basically toilet humor and shock humor that's not funny. At least in my opinion, isn't funny. I don't find that entertaining. But even if somebody does find that entertaining, why should they be the only ones who are allowed to have humor that they like? Why shouldn't everyone be allowed to have their own types of humor? Oh, and we've got a $20 one from Tony Guevara, says, re, like that. Okay. I don't know if I got all the O's there.
I don't think there was enough enthusiasm there.
All the E's there, but okay, how would you do it?
I'm not going to do it. It's your show. I'm not going
to. Yeah, it's more about the E, the R is almost in the background.
That was perfect. I don't know, man. Like, I also am annoyed at seeing multinational corporations talk about the right type of censorship as if that's a thing.
Well, censorship, that is, like, I worked as a social media administrator censoring content. And what you learn is that the censor is the person that is just looking to see if it's okay. If you allow content to exist, you're still censoring it as the censor, but your censorship is this can be. So just that there is a censor on board. So not all censorship is bad. Like if someone posts child porn, the censor will say, hey, that can't go up. It was censored and it was righteous, you could argue. And censorship doesn't always mean taking something down, basically. It just means that there is someone observing and deciding whether it can be up or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't always, you don't always need to have a censor in place, but sometimes things get really bad really fast if you don't.
We'd love to live in a world where no one felt the need to make, consume, or post child porn. And therefore we wouldn't need one person to say, hey, wait, don't put that up. Yeah. We would love it if you had the personal wherewithal to not do that, because in my opinion, I think everyone's opinion, it's awful.
But that's a crime. We're talking about art.
I think having
but they're
centralized,
saying you're bordering on like hateful speech, which what does that remind you of? Hate speech, which is a crime.
Centralizing the censorship is dangerous.
Hate speech is a crime. What do you mean a crime?
You can be
by law?
prosecuted
in some
America?
countries.
Yeah, you can be convicted of hate speech.
In America?
Yeah, of hate crimes.
Of hate speech on the internet?
That's what a hate crime is.
Like, okay.
If I said something hateful and it violated...
How does free speech not cover that?
Because we have given up free speech as a country.
Are you sure it's a crime? I'm reading about it.
Is there strong precedent of like actual prosecution? I mean, I know this has happened in the UK.
I have known someone to be convicted of being, well, this is in person, it's not the internet, of using a racial slur towards someone and being convicted of hate crime.
Okay, so it happened in even then.
Then it would still extend. There's
insane.
no reason to believe it wouldn't apply to the internet.
That's insane.
Bet you can find a specific case. My example is in person. Obviously, you shouldn't use racial slurs. On the other hand, like, that is censoring free speech, but we do it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I tend to like hate speech. I like that.
Look,
I like that
we can regulate it.
I like that it's legal to tell someone that you hate them. I think that is a core tenet of the United States. That you can express it. If you're not allowed to express your hate, it just comes out as violence.
Sure.
So you have to be able to vocalize that stuff to get past it peacefully.
Yeah, and we aren't. I don't want anyone to be. I don't know that I would be comfortable having a central censor like you're saying, who is saying, well, you're not allowed to express these ideas or thoughts, even if they're awful and I don't like them, right? If they're awful and everyone hates them, they will die on their own.
And then it becomes some subjective idea of what another person who has lived an entirely different life from you, an entirely different life from the person who you're supposedly being accused of committing this hate crime against for saying something, and you have some subjective definition of what that means.
Right.
Like, I have a problem with that.
Well, and like, think about the ACLU. For a long time, the ACLU used to have this reputation for defending Nazis because they said terrible things, but the ACLU was like, you have the right to say it. That is free speech. The ACLU has shifted and takes on much more progressive cases in these day and age, but there was a time when we were saying free speech extends to speech we don't like, and now we are sort of starting to test those boundaries, in my opinion. I'm not a legal expert.
Insane.
I did not go to law school.
Those things should not be illegal.
The Nazis, like the part of what they were doing that wasn't wrong is spewing hate. It was when they got violent was when they went over the line.
Well, when you're actually physically harming someone, then you've invaded somebody's.
I get the argument, like, that you can rile up a crowd of people, especially with the internet, like 100 million people overnight, and get them angry with hate speech alone. And then violence might happen. But like, I don't think you can attempt to stop the process.
To act on that.
My question is hate speech itself its own crime?
No. Not in the United States.
Be.
In Canada, I think it is.
But that's
$16,000 fine. Is that right?
Those are all parts
insane.
of hate crimes. Speech is regulated under hate crime law.
In Canada?
In the U.S.
Are you sure? I'm reading about hate crime. Public hate speech, hate crime. They're different in the United States. Hate crime.
Because what
criminal offense against
also,
a person.
I mean, the idea of hate crime is still one of those ones where it's like, is not every crime that's committed against another person done in the act of hate? Like,
how do you know what motivated the crime? Like, you need an admission from the person. How do you know they're even being honest?
A $20 one from Francisco Sanchez Jr. He says, in Great Britain, hate speech can get you prison time. Also, the great nation of Canada. If you can't say something awful, then there is no free speech. The point of free speech is to defend the speech that's abhorrent. That nobody needs to defend speech that everybody likes. That doesn't make any sense.
It's so you can walk into a bar, tell someone to their face that you can't stand them. You guys scream at each other, and then it's over. As soon as someone, if there's no hate speech allowed, you can't walk in. It's just going to resort to people punching each other in silent or in the shade. Like you need people to be able to get it out in vocally and have that you're not going to get attacked. You're allowed to say this to someone. You're not going to get attacked.
Yeah.
So we protect people's ability to spew hate at each other.
I mean, I always see this like look.
I don't know what this has to do with Sarah Silverman. It's just my thoughts on the topic.
We've moved from we're
Yeah, I mean,
first we were
hate
talking
speech and comedy. They're kind of
first we're talking art, and then that's the argument that they use to censor the art. They're saying that if the definition of hate speech is malleable, then the definition of hate speech as it relates to comedy can be malleable, and some douchebag over at MSNBC can tell you what you're allowed to say based on what he defines as hateful content.
You know, inciting violence is illegal.
Yeah.
And that is not the difference of hate speech and inciting violence are not the same thing. You can speak hatefully and not incite violence. You can incite violence without speaking hatefully. Although you could maybe argue that inciting violence is a form of hate.
But even for me, it's like, it's one of those things where like, I take the approach that when somebody says something awful to me, like I can't control what that dude said, but I can absolutely control how I respond to that. And I think that admitting that we're in a society now that doesn't even want to give people the opportunity to be enough of an adult to take responsibility for their own actions, meaning how they respond to other people's behavior towards them, that's a problem. That means we're infantilizing society. You cannot always control what happens when somebody physically attacks you or tries to harm you physically. That's obviously a crime. But to say that we no longer trust people to be able to handle the criticism of others just feels like we're surrendering our... We're basically, it's a tacit admission that we're like infantilizing our entire populace.
You remind people you don't have a right to be comfortable. You don't have a right to feel good. You don't have a right to be safe. Those aren't rights. You need to create those situations for yourself.
There's a $20 one here from Derp State Surveillance. Maybe what you interpret as hate speech was said from a place of love. Example, I love making people gasp or look uncomfortable at controversial humor. There is a huge difference between saying and doing a horrible thing. Yeah, context matters too. Like, what about somebody who gets told something uncomfortably true about themselves? Like, hey, Bam Margera, you're a drug addict. You need to go get help because you're acting like a piece of shit and you're not going to be able to see your kid unless you do something about it.
Yeah.
Is that hate speech?
No, because hate speech is specific speech that is like hateful towards classes of people. So you're singling out Bam Margera as someone who's struggling. People might say it's libelous depending on who you are and what platform you expel this thought in. But like hate speech is something directed towards a class.
Like
of people.
fat people? Like,
I
hey,
don't
Bam
know.
Margera, lose some
I don't
weight?
know if they're a protected class, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like
But that's the
protected
slippery
classes tend
slope.
to be racial, religious, gender, or sexuality.
That's the road that we got to watch out for. Short people, fat people. Like, I can see that road heading towards you're not allowed to insult someone about their weight.
It was actually funny because it was like my dad, like when we first started hearing about the introduction of like protected classes, like when Obama came into office, my dad said bad. Like he's like, this is going to lead to a caste, like a weird caste system where certain people are going to be allowed to be criticized and
That's
other
what Sarah
people.
Silverman's arguing. I pointed at Brett's monitor.
Yeah.
She is saying you can make fun of yourself if you are part of that group. So a fat person can make fun of fat people, but Sarah Silverman cannot comment on fat people because she is not fat.
Unless she identifies as fat or gets fat. Maybe she can get fat to make fun of fat people.
Dude, that would be a great thing where a guy, okay, I want somebody to make a movie where it's literally a guy, all he can come up with are fat jokes, but because he's skinny, he's not allowed to make those jokes. He works to get fat to make the jokes at a comedy show, and that
he just wears a fat suit and then one day gets found out.
It could be Black Mirror, man. That could be, it would take place in Britain.
Weird Al, when he would perform Fat, it's his version of Bad by Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
He would do it in a fat suit. I don't know if he still does it in a fat suit, but he was up until a couple of years ago because Weird Al is, he's untouchable. Everyone loves Weird Al. Like everyone but Coolio loved Weird Al. So. Look, it's that slippery slope. I don't like the tone in which they're like, maybe man, but perhaps like their tone is just so elitist and annoying. It makes me hate these newspapers even more because they're just
You're talking about the MSNBC article?
Yeah. I was like, maybe, man. But she says, besides, there are so many other things to mock other than marginalized people. Things like bad breath, which Sarah Silverman croons about. That's not funny. And I'm saying that, so I don't think it's funny. So what if somebody else wants to make another joke? They're not, now they have to check with you? Kick rocks.
Okay, well, here's my other example. So she's saying don't make fun of marginalized people. But what if you are a person who, so in America, that would be like racial minorities, right? And obviously you shouldn't be mean to people about anything they can't control or anything like that. But what if you are from another country where your ethnicity is the dominant ethnicity?
Yeah.
So you're a comedian who developed there, and then you come to America and you're going to perform. Would you have to change your rules to then fit our society's standard of comedy?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
Also, they're
it
kind of
creates an
interpreting-
impossible standard because you're trying to regulate something in this one scope that's actually very limited.
Yeah, and it sets up a situation where in 20 years, the comedy from 20 years ago might be considered racist now.
I mean, we're already seeing that. Who was it who said we couldn't make The Office in today's day and age?
Yeah, Mindy Kaling said we wouldn't be able to make The Office today. You see that
well,
they're
her
making
career is failing, so
Did you
I
see that
understand why.
they're making a female-led version of The Office?
I don't understand. We already had Jan. I don't understand.
It's an Australian version.
Also, if you have ever worked in a female-led or all-female office, let me tell you, no thank you.
Yeah.
I said that about Mindy Kaling out of anger, and I'm on TV, so I should be respectful and responsible. I don't know if her career is failing, but Scooby-Doo looked horrible. And I heard it was absolutely terrible.
It was horrible, and it was extremely mean-spirited. In fact, actually, you know what? That reminds me of something. There's a difference between tone, right? So the reason people hated Velma is because it was extremely mean-spirited. What they're saying here is that you're not even smart enough to be able to denote the tone of the comedy you're watching. So there is a difference between mean-spirited comedy, comedy that's just observational, and comedy that's done in jest. And tone matters in your ability to discern the tone. Unfortunately, that's on you. That's on you, the person watching it, because when you enter into a relationship with a comedian, all he can do is present you the art. It's up to you to interpret the art in the way that you want to, and he has to kind of relinquish control of that and say, look, I'm going to make this joke, and it's up to you to decide how you take it. In a lot of ways. One of the problems with a lot of the art we're seeing these days is that a lot of these actors, they make a movie and then they rush to tell you what that was about, what they meant by that, rather than just letting the art exist and letting you interpret it for whatever you want it to be. And that's a problem because they're infantilizing you, me, everyone else who becomes the audience for that.
Kind of a reverse of making a YouTube video and then going and reading the comments right away afterwards. Like, why do you care what the interpretation of your art was? Yeah. Why not just let the art breathe on its own?
Yeah. I mean, I have that issue here, like where people will watch stuff we make and they have their opinions of whatever we're talking about. And you just have to kind of say like, look, you're allowed to have your opinions on whatever it is you think. And that's fine. Like, I have no right to tell you what to think about it. All I can do is share my opinions with you, and whatever conclusion you interpret from that, that's your business. It's not my business. So. All right, we got some super chats there.
Yeah, we have a bunch. So Deuce Boogaloo said, hey, Hannah Claire, haven't seen you in a while. Wanted to ask how you enjoyed the Timcast Miami trip. Love that y'all have gotten to have fun in my hometown. Miami was super cool. Thanks for asking. I have been to other parts of Florida, but never Miami.
I still haven't been. I've driven through Miami, but I haven't spent any. I've been to Florida a bunch.
Yeah,
but not. I haven't spent any time.
I was really happy to be able to just like be in the ocean for a while because I always feel like that's the thing I want to do every year, at least at one point, be able to like hang out at the ocean. Derek Nall says Bam's downfall was Ryan Dunn died in a wreck and Jackass cast was all broken up. CKY and boys sit all contributed. I don't know what he means by that. But losing Dunn killed Bams years ago.
Yeah, I've heard that before that I guess they were really close. But like it's like when tragedy happens, like there's an adjustment period, right? Like you have to go through it. You have to feel what you feel when you go through something like that. And it's still, unfortunately, on us as individuals to then find our way back to some semblance of normality and get right with whatever we need to get right because, you can't live a life free of any tragedy.
Yeah. Like, and I'm just going to say, like, as I'm sure profound and extreme that loss was, Bam didn't like taking responsibility before his death, right? So that part of his personality was already established at that point.
And let's hope that he turns it around. Me talking about it, one of the hardest things about this job is like, I want to talk about it, but I don't want to be judgmental of the person.
because Bam could be sitting here tomorrow. I feel
like I would say all of this to his face, to be honest. Although we don't know each other very well, so coming from me is not meaningful. Yeah. You know what I mean? Matarai Sensei says, what you guys are missing is that Egypt doesn't have a monopoly on Egyptian history. They don't even span the same territory as they once did. That doesn't mean I don't think they can object to the fact that some mega corporation is using their history for a profit.
What if Egypt had their own version of Netflix, Egypt Flicks, and they decide to make a movie about the American Revolution, and they change what all of our forefathers look like?
I think it would be ridiculed the same way that Cleopatra was ridiculed.
Especially if you're passing it off as a documentary.
Because they're white, I don't think it would be ridiculed. I think every one of the major networks in America would be like, oh my God, you guys are amazing for doing that.
I meant by the kids that can see the truth.
I just think if you're presenting something as a documentary, sure, anyone can foray into the subject, but people from Egypt do have the right to be like, that's not what happened at all.
Egyptian government's notorious for trying to suppress quality, change to history. Did you see all this Graham Hancock work at the pyramids? They're trying to talk about the Sphinx being way older than they thought it was, and the Egyptians are trying to shut down all this new data. No, the history is this, and if they feel like if people change it, it might take power away from the Egyptians. They have their story about what happened in the past.
Wouldn't it make them more powerful if it was like, hey, it's even older? There was an even older civilization. You guys were,
I think so,
operating for a long time.
I think the pharaohs were psychopathic, inbreeding, just crazy psychotic humans that would conquer and destroy and eradicate past history. Yeah. You look at the Great Pyramid, and there's the king's chamber inside's made out of granite. This well-cut, huge, thick granite. Obviously wasn't Egyptian from that time. It was I think they came there and they buried it with this limestone crap, and then they made their pyramid over top of it. But where's that in the history book?
Aliens, man, ancient aliens.
Which again, is that a documentary or where are we at that?
We may never know. We got a $20 one here from Clint Torres. He says, "Howdy, people. Ian, happy to see you, brother.
Thanks,
Brett.
Clint.
Brett, love the cap. Hannah Claire." And then they're just faces there. He's saying Hannah Claire.
He's getting a neutral face.
There's a
neutral back at you, buddy. Okay. Do you want me to keep going with this?
Yeah, let's do a couple more.
Noah Cloud says, "Hey guys, have you read the book They Became What They Beheld by Edmund Carpenter? I think it does a good job explaining the phenomena of pop culture."
I'll have to check it out. I finally finished Virtue Bombs. I've read Christian Toto's book, and I'm working my way through Mark Dice's book now on the history of Hollywood as well. I'm a very slow reader. These days, I got so in the habit of if I was reading, it was audiobooks most of the time, but actually having to sit down, and I didn't realize until I came out here to work how much phones had destroyed my attention span. Unfortunately, it affects my ability to just sit down and focus on a singular task. Even sometimes I think I can do the best part about this job is that I'm doing multiple things at once. None of them very well. I don't excel at any one, but you can do all of them together fairly well. Because when I have to sit down and just read one thing, that is hard for me to half the work for me is just making sure that I'm reading and not just my brain doesn't just go blank as I'm reading it. So.
Right.
Yeah, you got to remember and understand what you're reading. It's easy to read words and not remember or understand what they were. Yep. But it's a little bit more challenging to actually be writing the code.
It actually then it's kind of then the show becomes a quiz every day. How much did you actually understand what you were
Dude,
reading?
I'll reread a section in a book 5, 6, 7 times until my brain understands it. And same with shows and TV. Part of why I don't watch movies with Kara, my girlfriend Kara, often is because I will rewind and rewatch segments that I don't quite understand over and over and over and over. Because I don't care. It's not fun. I'm doing it to learn for the most part.
And if she's sitting down to watch a movie with you, she's going into it with different intention.
If I've got to pause and rewind, I imagine that would disrupt maybe she could handle it, but I don't like putting people through that.
There's no. I think people feel like you're supposed to get things on the first take all the time. I think especially when you're reading books or something an author has put time into thinking about and writing out, and there's data or whatever else. It's reasonable to have to read it a couple times to pick up on this massive amount of information.
That's actually one of the hardest parts about doing movie reviews here. It's like you go watch a movie once, like I can give you my general opinion of it, but I can't give you some deep nuanced take about what I just watched because I've only seen it once. All the things that I geek out on here, the shows that I talk about where I go into depth about it, I've seen not dozens of times, but probably pretty close, right? So what I've learned or what I've gleaned from those shows is like etched in my brain in a way that you don't get on one watching of a movie. Like you have to just watch it through multiple times. And that's kind of a problem. Like there have been a couple that I've like watched, talked about, and then rewatched and been like, oh, my interpretation is now different, but that doesn't mean the first review is any less valid. It just means that I didn't have all the information there because I didn't process it all at that time. So, all right, let's go on. We got one more thing to talk about. I want to talk about celebrity entitlement, or in this case, fan celebrity entitlement, because people are not very happy that there was a video of Jenna Ortega, who is very famous now because of the Scream series and is obviously Wednesday Addams. Well, she was caught smoking outside of a building, and people were like losing their mind. They're like saying it's fake. I kid you not. They're like deep fake. This is the problem, Ian. We're now in a world where anytime something bad happens to anyone or somebody does something wrong, a bunch of people are going to come out and just say like, nope, not real.
That's what Andrew Tate in that interview with the BBC, she was like, you said this. And he was like, no, I didn't say that. And she was like, we have a transcript of you saying it. He's like, no, you heard me say that on the internet somewhere. It doesn't mean I said it. I'm like, well, what are you saying, Andrew?
They should be able to prove, like they should be able to pull up the actual.
But he was implying that the video itself was a deep fake,
or
that it may have been a deep fake of him saying it, but it was like obviously him saying it on video.
It's like, and the funny thing about the Andrew Tate thing is that actually when all the stuff with Andrew Tate came out and he got arrested, it showed how malleable our reality is, because you would go and go to a comment section on a YouTube short that was talking about it, and somebody would be like, was he arrested? And you'd get 50 comments saying, yes, he was actually arrested. 50 comments saying, no, this is an old arrest. He hasn't been arrested right now. He's free. And of course, they're saying it with all the certainty in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how real is anything we're seeing these days? It's so easy to like, nobody in their right mind has the time to check the accuracy of 50 different responses for something that's told to them on social media. So it's like, how many times are you gonna, you ask a question, is the sky blue? How many yeses are you going to take? There it is, second crisis party. The bullet scared him. Like, how many times do you have to hear somebody say yes, the sky is blue, before you accept it as fact?
How many times?
Yeah. Oh, or let me rephrase. If you go to a site and you say, is the sky green? And 10 people say yes, because let's face it, it's the internet. There's at least 10 people that would probably say that to you. And that's on a non-controversial issue. How many times do you have to hear somebody say something like that before you just accept it as true?
If I can get to 3 segregated environments and hear like 5 people in each environment say it, I'll start to think it's corroboration.
See? Like, as I'm saying. And that's something that can be very easily drummed up on the internet, no problem. So, but the point here is that fans these days are getting a little bit uppity about what they think they're entitled to from celebrities. We talked about, like, I think there's an argument to be made that, like, we talk about what can we expect from these companies that are making movies? Like, look, we're the one paying for this. We want movies, like, we don't want Disney remakes. We want you to make original movies. Right? So is that fan entitlement any more than it is we want this celebrity to act this way?
So why do you think it bothers them that she's smoking?
Because they're having their image of who this person was, which is directly correlating to characters she's played, mm-hmm. and cherry-picked appearances she's done on red carpet.
More specifically, like, what
makes
about
her human.
Smoking? What about smoking is wrong in their opinion? It's not like, oh, she was seen eating at McDonald's and we're mad about it. It's
They'd probably be mad about that too.
Yeah, but we're not hearing about it. They're specifically mad that she is smoking, and why is that?
Does it break the illusion?
If she was vaping, would it be better?
Yeah, maybe, that's a very good question.
I'm being totally serious. Like, I get that someone is mad at her about something, but why is this action in particular?
And I say, why do you care at all? I mean, my stance is like, don't worship any celebrity.
Sure, but if you're worshiping them, why does the fact that she's smoking a cigarette bother you?
Maybe because she's got big teeth, and this is going to make them brown over the years, and they're like, no, don't ruin my favorite thing about you, which is
But
your
she's got
front
a lot
teeth.
of money. She can pay for teeth whitening, right?
True.
I mean, like, it's really funny because then, like, people are like, Brett loves Tom Cruise. I'm like, yeah, but I wouldn't give a crap if he smoked cigarettes or did stuff I didn't approve of.
Is it okay if Tom Cruise smoked cigarettes and it's not okay for Jenna Ortega to?
I bet it's because she has a huge fan base of kids that follow her.
Yeah,
And
that's
people
seriously what I'm wondering.
Like 14,
Like,
13, 12.
also, they think of her as
younger.
being a high school age kid because she plays Wednesday.
Yeah.
They think it's wrong that she is smoking the same way that they were mad when Miley Cyrus took her clothes off and twerked because her following is young.
And then there's people that, like, the second comment down says deep fake. No way this is real. Where did you find this? And like there's multiple people saying that here. Fake. It's not fake. Like they're actually having this argument back and forth. Reality is becoming malleable. Like I said, I don't know if these people mean it or not, but I guarantee you there's people that are reading these comments that are wondering that are believing that these people actually think it's fake.
Someone should take that photo and actually make a deep fake of her, like, again, eating from McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or stuff like that. See if like other people get upset about basically the same thing.
And then there's people that are more rational who are saying, what do you care if she smokes? Who cares? Like, why do you care about this? But we're seeing this type of weird, we've come to an age now where celebrity worship feels like it's at an all-time high, except for it's not just celebrities, it's influencer worship.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think celebrity,
It's
I don't feel
influencer
it. It's
worship.
influencer worship, and that can extend all kinds of people. I know all sorts of people who would be like, no, I don't care about Hollywood at all, but they do have a blogger that they follow very intensely.
I want her to be smoking a joint. That's what this is.
Would that one be okay?
She's smoking weed.
Would people be like, yeah, let's go Jenna
Yeah.
Ortega if she was smoking?
It's a
like
spliff.
A joint?
Yeah, it's a spliff.
We got a
That's my
$20.
guess.
We got a $20 super chat from Deuce Boogaloo. He says most movie critics go into a film with a pen and notepad and write down things they notice in their review. Even Critical Drinker and Gary from Nerdrotic do it. Yes.
Yeah, I did that when I only did one movie review, but I was doing it when we were at Top Gun Maverick.
I've done it for a couple of the movies that we've reviewed here, but I rely so heavily on, the idea that, it's not, at the end of the day, it's not what a person says to you that you'll remember. It's how they made you feel.
Yeah.
That's a lot of my approach to movies. Like, how I leave a theater feeling is a huge gauge as to what my rating for that film is going to be.
Do you find the temperature of the theater affects?
Yeah, and I can never get it right. Like I always I bring a hoodie just in case. That never seems to be relevant anymore. I think the place that I go has seat warmers, though I've never incorporated them if necessary. But it's like you do have to take a certain amount of notes, and certainly when I review things that are like Netflix movies or things at home where I take pages of notes when we're reviewing things that are television shows and stuff like that, because I can do that without bothering people. At the theater, I'm doing it with my phone, and I have to like cover my phone, so I'm not, we sit way in the back anyways, but you try to not distract anyone while you're doing that.
In regards to like knowledge altering the way you feel about something, like knowing that thing's poisonous is going to make you feel a little different when you see one of them, kind of, for instance.
Like a cigarette. If you're Jenna Ortega, maybe people are just mad because they know cigarettes are bad for you, and they're like, we want to watch you act for the next 50 years. Don't do that.
Do you feel like your knowledge of cinema alters the way you feel about movies?
Honestly, no. I like what I like about it. What I like about the medium of film and television is that when it's done right, it can completely remove you from your environment and your knowledge and immerse you in a story. So if it's just an okay story, then yes, I'm focusing on shot composition, lenses, how is this shot? What type of lens did they use? What type of camera work is being done here? That stuff is the stuff that I think about when it's only mildly engaging. When a movie really catches you and gets you emotionally invested in what you're watching, that stuff fades into the background and the story becomes all there is.
Really?
And that's what all movies should be, in my opinion.
Really?
Like, for me,
I feel
yeah.
like some of that stuff factors into why I feel emotionally attached to movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it's done, like if they're doing their job well, if they've composed the shot right, if the script is good, if the sound design is fantastic, if all of these things come together, and it is why I always talk about the actual art of making a good movie is a miracle almost each and every time it's done. When you think about how much work goes into making a movie, all of the people who are in it, all the people involved of varying levels of competency and status, all of the decisions that have to be made, the money that has to be forked out, the director, all the people that go into making those choices, it's a miracle that good stories get told on that scale. So when it does happen, yes, I will forgive the odd bad moment. But then there's also examples where something can be so bad it ruins it for you. When we went to the Batman, I was like, okay, it's too long. It lost me from the beginning. 2 hours and 55 minutes. I'm like, I have to be here for 3 hours. I don't want to do this. I thought the film, the noir style of the film was off-putting. It didn't work for me for this particular Batman film. I had grown used to what we had gotten in the last two iterations, which were Nolan, which made more of a crime noir, but still set in modern day, or at least timeless. And then Ben Affleck's Batman, which was very comic book oriented. So in thus less, more campy in design, even if the story was more serious. What I'm looking at now was drab for the sake of drab, but I gave it a shot. And I watched the movie and it was fine. And I was like, I don't really like it, but whatever. But then when we got to the one line where Catwoman uses the term white privilege in a movie that has no other dialogue like that, it ruined it for me. It took me out of the film completely and destroyed any possibility I have of giving the movie an average rating. At that point, it ruined it for me. So one bad mistake cost the experience.
I'm looking at Batman's costume from the Batman. I'm thinking, like, if aliens saw us and they're like, these humans, they worship one of their own that wears a plastic bat costume that looks like a poor image of a bat or something. Like, it's a really stupid looking costume.
But to be fair, that's
ears.
supposed to be like that because that's his first costume before he's really come into the role of Batman. So he's like, that's his first go around.
The idea that a human would dress up in a plastic costume as a bat and move around is like, what are you doing, humans? Like, this is what you're focused on right now?
There's great psychology behind, the shattered spirit of a kid who lost his parents as a child, who dresses up as an alter ego to fight crime. I think there's actually a great story to be told there. But I don't know if aliens would have any desire to
like
to
identifying with
that.
the bat. I feel like that's getting old. Maybe you should just have a round helmet.
No. There's there's actually Photoshop collages of what Batman looks like without the ears. It's awful. Like, Google it.
It looks super weird.
Google Batman without the ears. It's terrifying.
Have they done it before?
They've never done it for a movie, but people Photoshop out the ears, and if you look at it, it's really
The only one I
uncomfortable.
remember is the conversation about the nipples. Like, what's his name's costume have nipples? And like that
Clooney
looks
and
super
yeah.
weird.
Yeah,
We
Batman
don't
without
like
the
that
ears
at all.
looks horrible.
Yeah, see, it's not good. So I'm saying, like, there's so many choices and so much nuance and so much minutia that goes into getting a movie made that when they come out well, it's amazing. When they come out really well, it's borderline a miracle. So when I can go to a theater, and that's another reason why theaters are beneficial for this, is because you are in an immersive experience, meaning the screen is very large, the sound is overwhelming, and I can get lost in it. And I love that. I love that feeling. And how I feel about the process of making movies doesn't come into it as much, though I understand why it does for other people. So cool. I don't know. But back to what we were talking about. So for
Ortega getting high.
For Ortega getting high, we don't want them. We don't want them to do this. But we see the same type of celebrity worship with Taylor Swift now. Like, I really do feel like she's ascending to a higher level of being. People are wearing diapers to her shows so that they don't have to miss any of the songs.
I know.
That's insane.
This is when you let Hollywood curate what the world thinks of you, then when you are your real self, there's this backlash. This is part of why being who you really are on the internet is so much more valuable than getting famous for being a character on a TV show, in my opinion.
I agree. Like, it's really funny, too, because I don't know how to not be who I am. Like, I'm not creative enough to try and put on a persona of
it's so stressful. It's constant. All day, 24/7, you're worried about that thing getting outed. Yeah. It's so annoying. I'm sure Jenna feels the same way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even her fault, right? Like, all she can do is be who she's not.
Right now, she's being herself right now, and people don't want to see her. They want to see Wednesday.
And they feel a certain ownership of her, which isn't fair at all.
They did it with the Beatles when they were doing acid. They were like, this is going to make all the kids do acid. And Paul McCartney was like, you're the one that's putting us doing acid on TV. So you're the one that's responsible for
we're being ourselves,
message.
and you're choosing to broadcast it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, that's an interesting discussion because, like, there's a lot of talk about, like, what musicians, like, how musicians represent a culture. Like, we've talked about how in Japan or with K-pop, like with K-pop artists, and a lot of them, they're representative of the culture and they're produced by their country in a lot of ways as an export to the rest of the world to show the best aspects of their culture. We don't take that approach with our artists here. No. Our artists are allowed to be free and be who they want to be, but unfortunately, what's promoted by the industry isn't always the best example of what we should be showing the world.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's true.
And you can't really do anything about that. The corporations have all the money, all the power, all the ability to push the messages they want.
American pop culture tends to love the semi-train wreck spectacle, right? They love the person who's sort of like getting into screaming fights with their friends over drinks in this reality TV show, or they, remember the like Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, that day and age of pop culture when the thing to do was like be photographed slightly too intoxicated coming out of a nightclub, or like maybe like have a paparazzi trying to photograph you in an inappropriate situation. Like now you can look back and be like, that's crazy that we've wanted people to act this way to get that image. On the other hand, we love the voyeurism of looking into someone whose lifestyle is just over the top to us.
Sarah
and that's
Silverman
why, like,
said that. She said that she had to apologize to Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie for saying that she used to rip on them back in the day. But I'm like, why are you apologizing to them? They promoted that image.
And it was a mutual relationship at that point.
Yeah.
Sarah Silverman had content and you were talking about them.
Yeah.
And that helped this pre-social media influencer.
It's what's going on right now with all of the hate. Like the reason why they do the race swaps that they know people are going to get mad at is because they know that we, the suckers, take the bait, we talk about it, and they get free promotion from it. The only difference is I would argue that back in the day, there was more of a mutually beneficial relationship for the Paris Hiltons. Like she gained more than I feel like the studios gain from us talking about their stuff. Because when people would watch people like Paris Hilton go through these breakdowns, they would read the TMZ articles, but then they're also buying her book. When her book comes out, people are now watching us talk about these Disney movies that suck, but they're not also going to see the movie.
And back in the day, pre-Instagram, I mean, think this is like when I'm talking about the early 2000s, what was the social media? MySpace? Like there really wasn't that much. The Kardashians are really credited with being the first reality TV stars to blend onto social media. There was an ecosystem in all of their businesses where they built these big followings on Instagram, on Twitter, on whatever it is, where they also sold their products. And when you were in the off season of their reality TV show, you could keep up with them there.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly having a way to have exposure. But with social media, you control it yourself. Instead of having to call the paparazzi and hope they'll show up and publish your picture, you can just post your own slightly intoxicated Instagram live story. And then TMZ will then cover that, and then you can take it down if you want to. You know what I mean? Like there is a more direct from influencer to consumer relationship right now.
Yep. Also, Flash could be the second greatest superhero film of all time. I think that's the full name. Says Brett, you completely misinterpreted what Catwoman said to Batman. It is not about the interpretation; it's about the actual word that was used. The rest of the language in that film did not have a bunch. At least from what I remember in the film, there wasn't a bunch of current year lingo, which took me out of the story experience. It's not about how I interpret what she said. I don't really care about what she said. I care that the word felt very 2022 in a movie that's not really set in that time period, or at least is set in a period that's supposed to feel more timeless. I felt that it was a bad line that needed to be removed. So that's my interpretation of that. I do agree with you that right now they don't need the paparazzi the same way that they used to in a lot of ways. And so for her, like, does Jenna Ortega benefit from this? I don't really think she benefits from it, but I don't think it hurts her long term anyways. I do think that there's a certain amount of tunnel vision also in these worlds right now. Like I was watching a video yesterday, they were talking about like there's a YouTube tunnel vision of sorts. Like people are worried about like the Flash is projected to only make like $70 million opening weekend. And they're like, because of Ezra Miller. I'm like, no, I don't think. I was like, does the average person know that who Ezra Miller is or what's going on?
No, that's the excuse. It probably was never going to make that much.
Yeah, like they might know, like, oh, he maybe he got in trouble, or like they might have seen something from it somewhere, but I don't think that they're paying attention to it obsessively the way that people in this space have to pay attention to it because they talk about it for work, or likely like people who are paying very close attention to Jenna Ortega may be more affected than people who just like the show Wednesday but don't really care about what she does in her off time.
Yeah.
So, all right. We got some super chats there.
Yeah. Waffle Sensei said, hi. It says, Ian, the Dwayne Johnson impersonation was like the funniest 2 seconds of my week, bro. Can you smell it? Lol. That was a great moment.
I love the look. I still get a kick out of The Rock. Also, in my opinion, he did his best work earlier in his career. When he was taking roles that seemed like when he was in G.I. Joe, I buy him as a G.I. Joe character, right? Because of how he looks. Now he just plays generic, sexless action hero / dad kind of character that's supposed to be like, look at him, he's a dad, but he's big and tough. But he's getting a movie based on his character from the Fast and the Furious. That's what he should lean into. Like that's his bag. He's good in those roles.
Overdress says, it's also normal that film techniques evolve and you're able to show old stories in new light, but Disney is now destroying the stories instead of enhancing them.
Yeah, we read that one earlier. But yes, you're 100% right.
Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that one. Corn Pop said, how did you get to the will to power to watch The Little Mermaid, Brett? There's the eye emojis and the target. Tim made you. I know it and it looks like the VHS tape.
He didn't make us. We look, it was long too. It was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. If they could have cut that thing down to an hour and 20, it probably would have been even better. There was so much unnecessary bloat in there. But, I promised that I would go and review more movies, and I've since been trying to do more of that. We've had more reviews out lately. I'm excited to review Extraction 2. That's coming out on Netflix here soon, so you should be looking for that review when that one drops. That's a good action movie, and I like Chris Hemsworth in that role, so we'll see.
Fear Me Spree said, these movies are made for the Disney adults that have because they've groomed an entire generation of mind slaves with main character syndrome. And there's a smiley face.
Yeah, it's true.
Everyone thinks they're I mean, I guess technically you are the main character in your own life, but
but you are not the main character in everybody's life.
Exactly. And also the Disney adult, they say it's made for the Disney adults. If that was true, would they not have made the changes, right? Like, they're saying that they're doing it for a whole generation of young girls who want to be inspired and look like... I showed a video yesterday where it's Halle Bailey who plays the Little Mermaid at Disney World, and she's hugging this little girl who's just bawling her eyes out. And I was like, they're so good at propaganda. They're so good at propaganda, because you can't criticize that. You can't criticize that video. You can't criticize now that they say, like, well, look, it represent... Because the quote then says at the bottom, says, this is why representation matters. And then you can't go in there and be like, well, actually, maybe you should create new Disney princesses, because then somebody's going to call you a bad name.
110% I could say that. Yeah.
But I'm saying, 110%. But you understand that that's
even
what their
if they're
point
saying
is.
This is no. I'm saying that if you, I mean, I've said it a couple times on the show, like, great. This girl has an emotional connection to the character Halle Berry played. She had a good time and she loves Disney. Like, great for her. If Disney really cared about representation, they wouldn't race swap. They would spend their lucrative bank accounts on researching other cultures and finding ways to adapt traditional mythology and text into their movies, right? All, like, The Little Mermaid is from Hans Christian Andersen, right? It was really dark back in the day. It's a European-centric thing. Why did we not find another culture that has the ethnicity that you're trying to represent their stories? Yeah. They do a disservice to everyone by passing this off as representation, and I think that video is an example of it.
Well, I'm saying it's propaganda.
Anyone who feels like representation is important is settling when they accept that that's what Disney is willing to give them. Disney has the money to do more. They choose not to. Brewmaster Monk says, yo, Ian, you were recently in Texas. What did you think of DFW? Did you perchance eat at a taco casa, easily the best fast food in the world?
I did not eat the taco casa. No.
Did you have any tacos while you were in Texas?
Wait, what is DFW?
No. Dallas Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's the airport. I remember I was there and I was in Austin. I liked both of those airports quite a bit.
DFW is also like the Dallas Fort Worth area.
Do you guys have a favorite airport?
Not off the top of my head. There's some really good ones out there.
I can't think of one off the top of my head.
Denver? Isn't that where Hoffa's buried?
Denver apparently has a secret city underneath it.
See?
They said it's a baggage shipping system that we never used. Which, why? You spent billions of dollars on it.
Sounds like
also, when Denver decided to build their current airport, they already had a working airport. So why did they do that?
I think Hoffa's...
This is like a real thing that people believe there's a bunker under the Denver airport.
Okay.
But did you like Dallas Fort Worth?
I loved it.
Yeah.
It was great.
I like Dallas a lot. T-Bone says, Ian, you're my hero. You should get on Discord more. Are you on the Discord?
T-Bone. I am on it, technically. Yeah, I don't go in there quite a lot.
They miss you.
Thank you.
HC, I like the curly hair. Nice change. Thank you so much. I'm trying. Brett, love the hat. Tripod is the cutest duck ever. Shout out to Olivia Claire for the duck pics.
It was duck pics. Yes. Tripod was adorable.
Corn Pop says, my gang name is Corn Pop, ... Ask Biden.
I can't. He tripped yesterday. He's probably in the hospital.
Okay, you saw this video of him tripping at
Yeah.
the Air Force. I have to ask a question, and it's different from the trip. Is it normal for a president to wear a baseball cap at a formal military graduation? Because that, obviously the trip, not good for different reasons. Hope Biden's okay. But it seemed really weird to me that he was wearing a baseball cap
What's
at
your reason? What do you think it's for?
I don't
it's
have
not
any.
him.
I'm not trying to read
it's not
into it.
him.
Or maybe he has like a
Just got some
earpiece
surgery.
he's trying to cover, like a hearing aid or something. Like
He's wearing like a beanie.
I could be way over reading this detail, but like all of these cadets are in like very serious uniform. I could pull photographs of other presidents at this. Like,
Was it windy?
it was sunny, but like
Maybe he's got
it's
a
always sunny
toupee.
Maybe
Why-
they're trying to
why-
make him look more relatable to the youth.
at a formal
Yeah.
event where they're all in these like very serious uniforms.
Yeah, like look how, because it's
Doesn't that
cool
seem-
to dress down these days. The
But
really
he's
rich
in a
people do
he's
it.
in a suit.
Yeah.
He's in
Yeah.
a suit with a baseball cap. Unless maybe someone gave it to him in the ceremony and I missed that.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is like a really weird random detail, but like, it just seems weird to me. I would not expect anyone to be wearing a baseball cap at like a formal ceremony like that. I don't know. Just some things about me. I fixated on that all day. Grafty says, Buck.
Thank you.
Corn Pop says, I'm converted, eyes emoji and some running. I'm now a woman.
Well,
Good to know.
Okay, that's good for you, buddy. It's that time of the year.
Did you know it's the best month to
It's
do
the
this?
best. There's this really funny YouTuber that I watch where he's like, every year in the comic book industry, he goes like, which clearly straight person will be coming out as supposedly vaguely gay this year during Pride Month?
So funny.
Nobody so far.
I saw this one guy doing this video where he was like being like Happy Pride Month from a company, so it'd be like Happy Pride Month from Burger Queen. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Oh, it's
so
like
funny.
the best one was it was like LGBT Qdoba.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was good.
And in the
They're
other,
like changing their name slightly.
it was like Burger Queen, LGBT Qdoba, and then my other favorite was obviously In and Out.
Yeah.
And then the last one is just like and have a happy summer from Chick-fil-A.
So funny. Deuce Boogaloo says, wait, HCB, you're talking about Brett starting a family, but what about you and Seamus? I am a strong Coughlin shipper.
Oh, there are Timcast shippers.
The best part of this is that when I first started, like when I first met Seamus and we were on the vlog a lot together because he used to sit behind me, everyone thought we were siblings. So to know that it's like now swung the other direction is sort of weird. But now we're just buddies. We're not meant to be. Number one, because I'm not Catholic, and I think that's pretty much a requirement.
That's
for him.
that's a sticking point.
But also
Yeah.
because, sorry, that sounds.
You heard her, Seamus. Nah.
You're a
Shots
You're
fired.
a very nice man, but I just see us as siblings. That's what the internet told me
What?
we were.
You didn't even have to add that last
Yeah.
part. All you had
She's
to
honest,
say
you
was
know?
the Catholic
one of her
part.
strengths.
Damn, dude.
Look, but then you get the like, would you convert? The answer is not to Catholicism. Sorry. I would be open to Catholicism if they started letting priests get married. It would be like a step in the right direction. But
Oh my gosh.
it's a no for me.
Okay.
Okay, Corn Pop says, do a Corn Pop war cry eyes with, I think, the battery emojis or maybe the soda. Anybody got a Corn Pop war cry?
Something like that, maybe?
That's amazing.
I'm gonna need somebody to clip that and send it to me.
That's going in the crisis party.
Yes.
Doll Click says, hi, Ian. Have you read Biocentrism by Robert Lavana?
Negative.
Lanza?
Lanza, maybe? I defend you in the IRL toxic chat. What? You're essential to the show, and I get your takes, Hannah Claire. Love your balanced opinions, and Brett, you're a great host. Oh, thanks.
Wait, so that makes you an essential worker. So during COVID, you would have had to work either way.
Yeah, you
as an
can't get laid
essential
off
worker.
IRL.
Did you ever see that one where it's like a guy? He's like a Baskin Robbins mascot. He says, "This is how the F am I essential?" Like,
That's really
He's
funny.
just like I think the biggest the moment I knew it was all kind of a scam was when liquor stores were like labeled essential. I'm like, is anything else like more clearly not essential? Like outside of America, basically just tacitly admitting that we are a country with that need like people would need it. Otherwise, a lot of people would go through withdrawal.
It's bananas.
Yeah.
Have you read this book?
I have
Biocentrism?
not, no.
Are you going to check it out? I don't
I'm
know what
looking
it's
at
about.
it now. Robert Lanza.
Yeah. I also think Ian's essential to the show. I think I
thanks.
like IRL in the way that we have lots of different personalities
it.
right now. I think that's nice.
Yeah.
I feel like you don't get stuck with anything.
And people gain an appreciation for you when you're not around.
Yeah.
If they
Well,
know what
and
they're
I
missing.
love, like, there are some nights that I'm on with you and I'm like, no, completely don't agree with that take. And there are other nights that I'm like, yeah, we're on the same page, you know?
great.
And I think that's reflective of, like, healthy friendships in a way, you know? You want to have people who agree with you but also don't just say the same thing back to you.
Yes. Yeah. I love disagreeing with people when it's real. It's so awesome.
And it's respectful. I think that's the nicest thing.
yeah.
You mean not when you slap a microphone and leave?
Not as much.
I've never done that.
Yeah.
I've also stayed past 27 minutes, so, you know. Francisco Sanchez Jr. said, in great... Oh, we read this one.
Yeah, we're
Blah,
down
blah, blah.
to... I think we're
Derp
down
State Surveillance says...
Nope, I think we're down...
Did we
Derp
do that
State.
one? Did we already read Howdy People?
All the $20 ones we read.
Okay.
So I think we're down to Luis Aguilar.
Cool. Luis Aguilar. It took me a month to read East of Eden, and I enjoyed every minute of it. Cal Trask is one of my favorite fictional characters. 9 out of 10. East of Eden's really good. Highly recommend. Carnell says, I think when it comes to rating/grading films, more people should adopt Jeremy Jan's rating scale.
Oh,
What
Jeremy
is that?
Johns.
Jeremy Johns.
He has oh gosh, what are they? He's like the one. He's the one movie reviewer that I watch all his like. So he's Awesome-tacular. That's his biggest one. He goes, a good time, no alcohol required. A better time if you're drunk. I think there's probably another one that I'm missing there, but yeah.
Is it like a scale, or is it like they're like badges that you can get? Like, how would you compare
So every
this to
time
other
he
scale?
gets like he does the review, and then at the end he goes, and that's what makes this movie awesome-tacular. And that looks like, and he says, and then it's like, oh, there's also like you'll probably forget it in T minus how
So
long.
there is like a hierarchy. Like
yes,
some are better than others.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I like Jeremy Johns' reviews a lot. He's one of the most relatable YouTubers. I would love to be able to get him on here, but I don't know how much he would want to engage in like
Why not call him?
He's like 2 million subscribers. Like
So
that's I was
gotta shoot your shot, Brett. You know.
I reached out to Jamie Kennedy, never got a response. That was the
And you're like, I'm done. After
I was like,
that.
I'm done after that. I'm not like I'm not putting myself out there again.
Everyone who watches this guy's rating should just start mentioning pop culture in all of his comments.
Would
Eventually,
buy
they'll
on
look you up.
would buy on Blu-ray. I'm looking at his.
Oh yeah, or it's like a good time to all go and like would buy on Blu-ray. There's a bunch of the ratings.
That's cool.
So. Yep, he's great.
Dog shit. That's his worst
Yeah,
rating.
that's
That's a good one.
Alfred LaRock says, Hannah, would you ever do a Batman/Catwoman couples costume when you find the right guy someday? Question mark, question mark, question mark. We're all wondering if I'll ever find the right guy. I'm not a huge Halloween person. Maybe if they were into it, I would. What do you got?
Batman, Catwoman.
Would I be Batman, do you think? Or do you think I would be Catwoman?
I think you would probably go as Catwoman.
Really?
I mean, that would be the stunner. But I mean, you could pull off Batman if that's what you're
Thanks.
into.
I appreciate that. I don't know. We'll have to see what this right guy
It's the
wants
ultimate
to do.
compliment that he's like, you could be Catwoman, but you could totally be Batman too.
Yeah, you could rock that
like
shit.
that's like the ultimate compliment. You're like the ultimate human if you can do both.
I actually appreciate that a lot. Batman was my favorite one of those heroes. Knowing very little about it, please no one question me on the plot.
He's your
points.
favorite hero.
I always liked. I felt like he was kind of dark and like tough, and then he's like a guy who works out and then applies his skills to things. And I
Yes.
think that's sort of nicer than Superman, who's got like the
Cheat
powers.
codes.
Yeah.
You know? Would you guys do a couple's costume? Oh, have you done a couple's costume for Halloween?
I have not, and I am planning to do Wesley and Princess Buttercup from The Princess Bride.
Stop! That's so
that'll
fun.
be this. That's this Halloween.
That's
Wait,
the
that's gonna
plan.
be awesome.
Yeah.
What are you?
amazing.
Have you ever done a couple's Halloween
I
costume?
do not do couples Halloween.
Who would you do?
costumes.
Like, if you had a girlfriend who was super into Halloween, what would be like your
Oh.
suggestion?
That's a fantastic question. Ooh, maybe Casey Jones and April O'Neil from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh.
You know, another one we might do is Wayne and Garth from Wayne's World.
Yes,
That'd be a good one.
That might be better.
Yeah.
I dated a guy who I think we did do it for Halloween. I can't remember now. Wendy Peppercorn and the guy with Squints from
Squints.
Sandlot.
Question
I always thought
for
was
you.
hilarious.
Is that like you see here it is? If they remade that movie, you wouldn't be able to remake the scene where he fakes drowning so that he can get a kiss from Wendy Peppercorn. That's going to get removed from the script now because of consent issues.
But
They're
they
not
get
allowing
married in the end.
Yep, and they have,
years
like-
later when everyone's age appropriate.
and they have like 1 million kids.
What movie is that?
Sandlot.
Sandlot.
Oh, I've never seen that.
You haven't? It's
No.
classic. It's really sweet.
But Wayne's World's a good one. You know,
Yeah.
it's funny thing is I had my first like auto inspection out here.
Okay.
And it was like the scene from Wayne's World where the guy's like, just passed. He's like, yeah, I just passed, barely. And I was like in there and I'm imagining myself as the guy talking to the mechanic at the auto body shop talking about seen Crucial Taunt at the nightclub the night before.
I was thinking of Wayne's World 2 when he's on his way to the wedding.
That's the second
different
one.
gas station.
Different Wayne's World.
Lots of good options here.
And there's one more there.
High Voltage 75 says, Ian, are you a member of the Film Actors Guild?
No, not right now. I was from about 2006 to 2009, and then I let it lapse.
Isn't it the Screen Actors?
Screen Actors Guild. And it's funny you said the Film Actors
They
Guild.
They have film. I'm wondering if they're making a bad joke.
Yes.
That's not a good abbreviation.
I
That's
like
not a
your
re-
professionalism. You're like,
All right,
I
guys.
Pretend you didn't say that.
I assume you have made an error.
All right, guys.
Well done.
Before we go, could you like this video and subscribe to this channel if you have not done so already? Do so, please. Thank you very much for that. Ian, my friend, let everyone know where they can find you. See, I go in the reverse order.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
This is
Guys caught me off
craziness.
guard. My adrenaline's firing. I'm going to be on Timcast IRL tonight at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is Timcast IRL on YouTube. Watch me there. And if you want to just get in touch with me generally, it's at Ian Crossland all over the internet. You can find me anywhere.
Perfect.
For the most part.
Cool. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for timcast.com. I will also be on Timcast tonight, so I'll get to hang out with Ian some more. It'll be fun. And if you want to follow me personally, you can follow me on Instagram at hannahclaire.b. You can follow me on Twitter at hcbrimlow. I should probably make those one thing eventually. More importantly, please just go right ahead and follow at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram. It's great. You get some news. You see stuff from me, from Chris Bertman, from Adrian Norman. Just all the best stuff on the internet, in my personal and humble opinion. And it'd be cool if you guys could support us. Thanks so much.
Perfect. If you guys would like to follow me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Brett Dasovic on both of those platforms. This show is here Monday through Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is noon Pacific. If you would like to listen to this podcast rather than watch, we are on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, and Spotify. And if you'd like to follow the show on social media, we are on Twitter at popculture_show, Facebook and TikTok at Pop Culture Crisis, and on Instagram at Pop Culture Crisis Pod. I do want to give another update that next week with Mary Gone, we will be having special guests throughout the whole week. Aiden Mattis from Lore Lodge will be sitting in each and every day. Me, him, and Phil will be here. It'll be the three of us on Monday, and then we will have a rotation of guests Tuesday through Friday. It's going to be a lot of fun next week, so we'll see you then, guys. We'll be back on Monday. Later.